All right, as chair, I call this Libertarian Seminar to order. Today's opener will be David Ramsay Steele, and the topic today is why Trump will resign and what President Vance must do on day one. That's awesome. All right, go for it.
Yes. So, you know, I was thinking about this meeting, and one thing I was thinking about was when I started these seminars, and I realized then that I don't know, even within a year or two, when I started the seminar. I mean, it was more than 20 years ago, certainly, but I don't really have a good fix on when it was. But I do remember that I wanted to get away from commonplace libertarian discussions, like all the hackneyed things like anarcho-capitalism versus minimal state, and also just restatements of the libertarian line. I wanted to get away from those. So I've always gone for quite dignified intellectual topics. But, you know, recently Eric has been videoing these meetings and putting them on YouTube. And as a result, I've begun to think about what titles would get the maximum number of hits. So what does this mean? Well, what it means is that the medium is the message. So, President Donald J. Trump is in an awkward situation because of the Iran war, which he started. And the awkward situation has several angles. The most basic is that if he just walks away now, it will certainly look like a defeat. But if he tries to do more, like more bombing attacks on Iran and that sort of thing, it's going to be a bigger defeat. And although he seems to have been persuaded to embark upon this very reckless and ill-judged escapade by being convinced that it would be just like kidnapping Maduro, overlooking certain basic facts about Iran and certain basic facts about Venezuela. But he's now in this fix where there is no way he can get out without it looking like a terrible defeat, which is what it is. But if he tries to escalate, it's going to be a worse defeat. And I think he's beginning to realize that. So this is the basic awkward position he's in. And to cap it all, there is something that probably he never took seriously before he embarked upon it. And that is that we're approaching the worst slump since the Great Depression. And that's already baked in, and there is nothing that anybody can do to prevent it. It's going to happen in 2 or 3 months from now. It's going to hit with full force. And so that, of course, is not something that he would necessarily be sentimental about, but it is something that will definitely lose him the midterms heavily. And it probably means, along with humiliating defeat in a nasty war, it probably means that the Republican Party will be finished for many election cycles, or at least there is no, it would take actually, I was going to say it would take a miracle. It would take a series of 1,000 miracles for the Republican Party to avoid a landslide loss. In other words, a landslide win for the Democrats in 2028. I don't see how that can possibly be avoided. So Trump is looking at this very bleak prospect, and anything he thinks of doing to escalate makes it worse. And every day that oil is held up going through the Straits of Hormuz, that makes it worse. Most people don't understand how long-term some of these processes are. 3 days ago, the last shipment of oil from the Persian Gulf to the United States to occur on February 27th, the day before Trump's war, arrived in the United States. So you have to understand that oil moves in tankers over the oceans at 15 miles per hour, which is a really decent pace if you're a pedal cyclist. And it's okay if you can keep it going continuously for month after month after month. But if you have an interruption, it's going to take a long time to put that right. What Trump has been doing so far, he's been engineering a remark or a speech or a claim on Friday afternoons so to avoid a real financial crash before the Monday, with an upbeat message that we're winning. Well, of course, we're losing terribly. We, meaning the United States, are losing terribly, and the situation is beyond any remedy. So that's the situation. Now, that alone wouldn't make me think necessarily that Trump will resign, although I think it's a big inducement to resign. Rather than, you have to understand that after the midterms, Congress is going to be really preoccupied with investigating Trump and with impeaching Trump. And this is not a pleasant way. He's not going to get any measures through. The measures he's got through so far are going to be reversed by various congressional shenanigans. And it's a bleak prospect. So I think even without the final factor, I think he would resign. But there is a final factor, and that is that it's clear that his mental disorder has got a lot worse. So he's got so bad that it's indisputable, except to a tiny handful of Zionists and Trump supporters. So this is adding to the situation. Now, I thought about saying this a few days ago when I was thinking about what I would say tonight, and I must admit I don't want to ignore any evidence, including evidence that is contrary to my thesis, but I must admit that the remarks Trump made after his narrow escape from assassination, if that's what it was, were very, very much the old Trump. And so the old Trump often said outrageous things and often said things that would really annoy certain people, but they were generally politically effective. They appealed to a lot of people. And one of the reasons I was convinced that his mental disorder has really got worse is that he's been scoring what we call own goals in soccer, which is prevalent in the place where I grew up. The expression own goals is well understood. And some of these own goals are really incompetent as politics. For example, picking a fight with Roman Catholics is with the Pope and then with other Roman Catholics like Candace Owens. That's not a winning move, you know. So Trump's outrageous statements in earlier stages of his career generally worked to his advantage. They were outrageous enough to get media space, but they pleased some people. They offended some people who you would never expect to vote for Republican anyway. And so on balance, they were usually well thought out, even though they seemed reckless and and rather silly. But now he has been making rather silly statements. So I don't know what to make of the fact that just after he narrowly escaped assassination, I don't that he gave quite a serious talk, and there's something going on. The White House press secretary gave a little interview just before that event, and the one thing that everybody talks about in that little interview she gave is that she said shots will be fired. but I personally don't place any significance in that at all. I don't think there was a conspiracy. I think it looks very much as though the person they arrested was the person who did it, and that he wanted to assassinate Trump. Although he apparently has been keeping mum since his arrest. But he's a typical kind of deranged lefty who would think that he was performing a service for history and humankind by taking a shot at the president. So nothing about that seems to call for some weird conspiracy. It seems to, on the surface, it seems to be what it really is. So, but in that speech that she made, she not only said shots will be fired, which I don't think is of the slightest significance, but she also said very confidently how everybody was going to like his speech, and she said it in a kind of tone as though she really knew something. So what's going on here? Well, maybe they found a new medication, but I don't know that, and maybe he's had a change of heart and suddenly told the people who knew him in the White House this and that, and how we mustn't divide the country and all the kind of stuff that he came out with. But anyway, I still maintain that the weight of evidence is that he's got some very serious brain disorder, and that is going to provide additional motivation for people in the White House to get him out. Now, some people might think they can't do that because whether he stays or goes is entirely up to him. I don't think that's realistic. I think if everybody, if even Marco Rubio was to get together and they were all to go to him and say, look, you've got to resign and we'll do the best to preserve your place in history, but if you don't resign, we will all resign at once and denounce you as the scoundrel you are, then I think that the pressure would be on him, given all the circumstances, that he would have to step down. So I'm not committed 100% to the idea that he will resign before the midterms, although I do think that's the most likely. So that means that if that happens, that means that there will be a President Vance, and President Vance will take over. And I think there are three things he has to do, or he must do. I put that in the title of this talk because I thought that would be the most challenging. And also it fits in with the fashion of the time where people have this totalitarian instinct to say this must happen and that must happen. So I'm doing it just to show that I can. So there are three. President Vance should make three announcements on day one, very, very clearly. One, he's not going to run in 2028. Since whoever runs for the Republicans is going to get totally slaughtered, this isn't giving up anything. But he should make that statement with absolute conviction and absolutely categorically. I am not going to run in 2028. And then, and thus, this will lend the proceedings a kind of non-self-interested quality, because he's just taking over. He's going to do the best he can for the country from now until the 2028 election. And then he's not going to run, and the implication will be that he's finished with politics. But of course, he's young enough to think of running in 2032. The second thing he should say is that the war against Iran was a terrible blunder for which he bears some of the responsibility. And he can leave it to other people to talk about the fact that it's now well known that Vance did oppose the decision to attack Iran. But still, you're responsible because you're part of the administration and you didn't resign at the time. He's going to say it was a terrible blunder, and he's going to accept all 10 points of Iran's proposed solution. Iran has announced very precisely what it will take for them to stop fighting in this war, and it's the 10 points that they've demanded, and Vance will accept all, if he does the right thing, will accept all 10 points unconditionally. And then the third thing he will do, and this may require a bit of explanation, he will state that he is immediately going to take measures to put the state of Israel in the same category as all other foreign countries with regard to such things as military aid and lobbying within the United States. Now you might wonder why that. By the way, I think all three, one of the good things about these three things, they're all very much to Vance's advantage. They're good moves. And you might wonder, can that possibly be a good move, since we know that Zionism can destroy any US politician. I've been watching this, and I've noticed that more and more people, especially in the Democratic Party, are distancing themselves from Israel and saying that I will never take any money from AIPAC. More and more Democratic politicians have been saying that. Recently, about a week ago, Rahm Emanuel, of all people, I don't know how many pictures he has cuddling with Benjamin Netanyahu, but there is more than one. But he said he still supports Israel's right to exist and to defend itself, but he thinks that it ought to be regularized and put on the same basis as other countries, and any military aid that goes to them, they should pay for, just like any other country in the world that takes American military equipment. They shouldn't get a subsidy. So that's Rahm Emanuel knows a lot more about politics in the down and dirty reality than I do, this is one more sign of the way the wind is blowing. Now, it may not be optimal. It might be better if we could have another 2 years, but you know, this is real life. It presses you with various problems when you have to make a decision, and I think this is well enough along. And the fact that Vance on day one will, I hope, say this distancing from Israel speech, this will compel other politicians, including people on the Democratic side who are going to inherit the United States in 2028, come what may. It will induce them to pluck up courage and stand out against Zionism. So that's the basic. That's my basic message, and those are the things that President Vance ought to say on day one, and I think may very well do. Okay, so I'll make a few other random observations that are related to this theme. My general view of the world situation is based on a number of principles which I'm prepared to defend at great length if called upon to do so. My first principle is that what I'm going to call market capitalism, I've decided that's the best, most appropriate label. Market capitalism is the only economic system. There is no alternative. Now, of course, realistically, there are alternatives. For example, there could be a thermonuclear exchange, and we would literally go back, some people think, to the Stone Age. And so all civilized society will fall. The great majority of the world's population will be killed, and there'll be a few isolated bands of hunter-gatherers, and then the whole sorry mess will start all over again. But anyway, that's one. So that's an alternative. When I say that market capitalism, there is no alternative, what I mean is that as long as some vestige of civilization survives, there are going to be politicians who want to appeal to the masses, and those politicians are going to be made aware that if you want high living standards for the masses, you must have market capitalism. There is no alternative. Secondly, I think this is maybe more controversial. I think the very existence of market capitalism promotes liberalism. In other words, my view is that liberalism is not something that happened to be invented by a few people like Adam Smith and John Stuart Mill, but liberalism is inherent in capitalism. That if you have a capitalist society, there's not an inevitable iron necessity, but there's a strong tendency for liberalism to arise, because what's needed economically for market capitalism to work tends to generate freedom of thought, freedom of discussion. And of course it tends to generate respect for private property, which is the foundation of market liberalism. So these things, I think, if everything started all over again, and everybody forgot about the actual pioneers of classical liberalism, it would emerge again. I think it emerged. You can see signs of it in ancient Sumer, 5000 BC. You can see it wherever there is a developed society and people start producing on a large scale and trading. You get these liberal ideas appearing. So in other words, I don't believe that we live in a world where there is going to be some anti-liberal thing like Russian communism, which is going to always be a threat. I think basically what we see today is that threat has completely gone away. There is increasing recognition. Well, it's not just increasing; it's almost complete. There's North Korea and there's Cuba. Apart from that, there's nothing really that is even in the imagination an alternative. Nobody is proposing an alternative. And I also think this, although I'm much more hesitant about this, that liberalism, Adam Smith liberalism, which is inherent in capitalism, tends to favour democracy. And when I say it tends to favour democracy, I don't mean it favours a perfect democracy. In fact, it may be that a perfect democracy is not the best. Maybe some kind of limitation on democracy is a good idea, but that's another discussion. But some measure of representation by the mass of people, I think, is the only way to secure legitimacy for any political system. Daniel Bell has written a book about the Chinese political. He lived in China for a couple of decades. Daniel Bell is the guy who had that big hit. I forget what it was called. Was it The End of History, or was that someone else? Anyway, Daniel Bell wrote a book that was extremely influential. and he certainly was a major participant in that end of history debate. And he has written a book arguing that the present system in China is better than democracy. So in China there is some democracy at the lowest, most local level, but at the highest level there is what Daniel Bell calls political meritocracy, and he says it's superior to democracy. I think he may have a point, and I think it may be that to preserve liberal democracy, there has to be some additional element of some kind of traditional authority. I hate to say that it would be like the Islamic Republic of Iran, but I think they may be one of many countries that are groping towards this limited kind of democracy. But anyway, I'm going to be interested to thoroughly study Daniel Bell's argument. I suspect I'm going to reject it, and the reason I'm going to reject it is because this political meritocracy, if you have a system that's a meritocracy, then the obvious question to ask is who is awarding points of merit? If it's simply within a bureaucratic structure, is this system of awarding points going to have any serious rationale? And another question I have about the Chinese political meritocracy is it may work well until there is such a time that there is a serious crisis of legitimacy. And then when there is and that will come at some point. In China, it may come in 20 or 30 years from now, who knows. But societies go through various phases, and they always at times face a crisis of legitimacy. And that means that there is radical disagreement in the society about what should prevail on some important issues. And then I think the appeal of democracy is unbeatable. You say, well, this is the people's will. There's very little that you can say about that. Whereas if it's just, well, this guy has got more points in the meritocratic system, so he's been promoted, that is not the sort of argument that will sway the masses and bring them on board. I've just mentioned a little point that I made in a previous presentation, and that is that in 1776, Adam Smith predicted that eventually all societies in the world would attain a kind of approximate equality based upon population. And his argument was that when he was writing in 1776, in chapter 4, in book 4, chapter 7 of the Wealth of Nations, when he was writing, he was surveying with a very realistic eye a world where Europeans had gone out and explored distant regions, and in doing so, many of them had committed atrocities against native peoples. And Adam Smith said, they got away with this because they had so much more power. Their economies were more productive. They had better military equipment, and so on. And we all know that this is broadly what happened in many cases. But he said this is eventually, these people are going to learn the tricks of the Europeans. He didn't put it like that, but that was what he was saying. The knowledge that the Europeans had about how to build factories and how to build cannon and all that kind of thing is going to be spread throughout the world. And you're going to find that countries which formerly were regarded as inferior are going to stand up for themselves, and they're going to counterbalance the power of the Europeans. So the dominance of the Europeans is going to come to an end. And that was like 2.5 centuries ago that Adam Smith said that. And I think it's quite remarkable. And what it shows is that the system of market capitalism, left to itself, automatically has the tendency to bring up the poorest people by educating them, by them picking up the tricks of the advanced societies. And we see this today in a most dramatic form in the war with Iran. Iran is technologically far superior to the United States in missile production. This is astounding. It ought to be astounding. When I started studying the special military operation, as my friend Vladimir Vladimirovich likes to put it, in Ukraine, when that war started, what did Russia do? They imported drones from Iran, because Iran was making the best drones in the world. And then, of course, the Russians improved them very rapidly, and the Russians were able to improve them very rapidly, partly because they were using them and they were getting daily reports on exactly what happened with these drones. And eventually they were teaching the Iranians a few things, but still, Iran is this society of 93 million people, and they have underground factories producing drones. And these drones were for a time the best in the world, and now they're the second best or third best, perhaps, after Russia and China. And this is Adam Smith, what Adam Smith said in 1776, coming to life. And I'm gladdened by it. To me, it's wonderful that all over the world people are developing techniques that can be used to generate prosperity for the masses, raise living standards, and can also enable them to stand up to the Europeans. I don't say that because I hate the Europeans, I certainly don't. But I'm just taking a kind of objective view of it. As I mentioned in a previous presentation, if we look at the shares of world GDP, the United States in 1960 had 40% of GDP, world GDP. 40% of output of goods and services occurred in this little country with, at that time, I forget the number, but it was less than 5% of the world's population, right? And they were producing 40% of the wealth. Today it's down to 15%, and it's falling all the time because generally speaking, the countries with the fastest growing GDP don't tend to be the countries with the biggest GDP. They tend to be a little way behind. And of course, the dramatic story of China, which we all know, that China, for quite a while, under Chairman Mao, no relation.
That we know of.
China,
he says there's none.
China, under Chairman Mao, pursued a policy of deliberately trying to suppress and abolish the market. That was a conscious aim. And of course, doing that had the effect of condemning the people of China to great poverty. They were one of the poorest countries in the world. And they literally were close to starvation. And periodically they had bouts of mass starvation, all caused by government policy, by nothing else, simply by this determination to suppress the market. And then in 1978, Deng Xiaoping decided, and obviously couldn't do this without some support, to make the market economy the key to all the new economic reforms in China. And we know what happened. Not immediately, but a few years later, the Chinese growth began to pick up, and then for a long time they had rates of growth above 10%. And they're never going to go back to those years, because now they're a rich country. They're still going to have higher rates of growth than the US, but they're never going to match what they did then. And then, of course, there's always the possibility that Xi Jinping or someone like that will try to reverse some of Deng Xiaoping's policies and actually introduce a lot more state regulation. Of course, that will kill the economy, as it always has done. That will impoverish the population. This is just part of the background to this present war. The present war arises ultimately because the ruling class in the United States has grown to accept that it rules the world and has this privileged position where it's able to decide what happens. Actually, I'll be quite honest with you, one of the things that amazes me is the sheer insolence of this. You know, that an American can go to India and say, why aren't you imposing sanctions on Russia? You know, this is so ill-mannered, you know, to treat these sovereign countries as though they were vassals of the US. And I can't imagine that there isn't a certain amount of resentment created by this. And now people are witnessing the limits of American power, and they're beginning to think the unthinkable. And that is, we don't have to do what the US tells us to do. You know, so this is a great liberation in many countries in the world which have been utterly dominated and regulated by the US. More and more people across the world are not going to stand for it anymore. And that's a great thing in my judgment. So the West, the traditional West is falling behind. So one of the reasons they're falling behind relatively is this process of economic development, which is automatic, inexorable, and built into market capitalism. The poorer people will tend to grow at a faster rate than the richer people. But there are other reasons. You know, military prowess and therefore political influence is not strictly correlated with GDP. GDP is obviously very important, but it's not a strict correlation. So why is it that the United States is incapable of increasing production of military hardware? That its production of missiles in each year is less than Russia is able to produce in a month. Why is there this situation where the US embarks upon a war like this current war, and they find after a few weeks they've run out of all their best missiles. They've run out of them. And they can only produce them at a tiny rate compared with the rate that Iran or Russia or China can produce them. Why is that? Well, it's partly a matter of the stage of industrialization that America is in, that countries which are best at producing military hardware are countries with a lot of factories and a lot of engineers. And you know, one thing about Iran is it's 93 million people, and a huge proportion of them are scientists and engineers. And the same thing applies to Russia. Russia has this system of dealing with the military side of the technology of military goods, which is completely different to anything that prevails in the West. And it enables them to get reports all the time on what exactly is happening at the battlefront. And so in each Russian factory there is a team of people who are getting reports every day from Ukraine. This is what we did with this missile or this drone, and this is how we try to improve it. We improvise this improvement, and it seems to work. And so there is this constant interaction between the factories producing this equipment and the front line. The actual corporals and people on the front line are in direct communication with the factories producing the weapons. They're constantly improving them in the light of experience. So this is something to do with the particular level of industry and the state of engineering. And you know what happens to a very wealthy country like the United States, it tends to move more and more towards services and less towards manufacture. And this is fine if you're just looking at this, ignoring war, but you're just looking at this in terms of living standards. This is free. It's free trade, and it leads to the optimal outcome, as free trade always does. But it does have this side effect on war. But apart from that, there is also an institutional thing here. The United States has to reform the way the government relates to military production. This is in need of a real thorough overhaul. And I'm not an expert on this, so I'm not going to say what form it should take. But obviously the present system where you have this military industrial complex and you have these enormous companies which are, you know, they dictate their own terms in the sense that the government goes to them and says, well, how many of these missiles can you produce per month? And they give a figure. They say, okay, well, we'll give you untold hundreds of billions of dollars if you just do that. You know, that's not the best system. And it's obvious that Russia has a better system. There ought to be, Congress ought to be looking into that. Why is it that we're unable to physically produce military hardware in the way that Russia and Iran can? Why? Why can't we do it? What do we need to change? Now, when they decide what needs to be changed, it's going to take years to implement. And it's going to take years to build new factories. So it's not going to be an instant cure. But this is what has to happen. I think I've said most of what I was going to say, and we can pursue other lines in the discussion. Oh yeah, one point I would like to make is the wars of regime change, and this is an ambiguous term. Regime change could mean, and when it first began to be used, a lot of people took it to mean this, that liberal democracies would overthrow tyrannies and totalitarian systems, and in conjunction with the native people, they would create new liberal democracies. So that was the theory that was sold to the consumers of the media. So that's one thing it can mean. Well, obviously, that has almost never worked. I mean, I suppose you could say, in a sense, it worked in Germany and Japan after the Second World War. Very special circumstances there, but since then, generally speaking, it has not worked. What has happened is that the United States has intervened in one country after another, and they brought about destruction, death, chaos and the disappearance of a coherent political system in the countries that they've defeated. So one natural line of thought is, was that the aim all along? Was that the real aim? Since that's, people say, well, US intervention has been one failure after another, but maybe it was a success, because maybe we want to destroy these destroy these other centers of power before they become big challengers. So this would be one argument. This is certainly the conscious and vociferous attitude of Israel. Israel, and this has actually achieved a little bit of newsworthiness, and people have commented on it. People in Israel are now saying, after we have thoroughly demolished Iran and reduced it to rubble, we're going to start on Turkey. Right? This is a common trope today in Israel. You get it in Israeli newspapers and so on. That this is the way to behave. So Israel cannot possibly conquer the whole Middle East in some kind of secure, ongoing empire. But what they can do, and what they have done in so many cases, they can take part in the attack, usually with the US help, of one country after another, reduce what was a reasonably coherent political system to utter incoherence and catastrophe. And the two most extreme examples of this, I think, are Libya and Syria, where it's sort of now taken for granted. Libya was the most promising economic case in Africa. And Gaddafi made the idiotic decision to do what the US told him and give up his weapons of mass destruction. I would say this to any country in that situation: do not give up your weapons of mass destruction. It's the only way you will be able to deter the United States from coming over, bombing your civilian population, reducing your society to rubble. And I would say that the big mistake Iran made was not developing nuclear weapons many years ago. But if Iran had nuclear weapons, the world would be a much more peaceful place. Iran would never aggressively attack another country. That's ridiculous. But there is a country that does aggressively attack other countries, and Iran would deter that country from, would put that country in its place. We're talking about 93 million people versus 7 million people. And there are various other disadvantages that that particular country has. So I think we have to ask the question: why is it that this kind of system has arisen, not just in Israel, but by default it's arisen in the US, where regime change has come to mean utter devastation, disorganization, collapse, chaos. And I think it's come about as a kind of improvised result of pursuing a policy of assuming that you are the dominant power in the world when you no longer are. And so it's not within your power to do what the US did to Japan, let's say, after 1945. That's not within the US's power. They don't have the military capability to defeat countries in that really comprehensive way. And also the ideological circumstances are very different. So they're reduced to this system of identifying threats, potential threats, usually from countries that have done them no harm at all. China has never attacked the US, and China has not even attacked Taiwan, right? But people talk as though, oh, it's a terrible enemy, China, you know, and it's the same with Iran, they have the same attitude. Now, I'm going to make this final point about Israel, and then I'll shut up for very briefly, I hope. One thing that's an interesting discussion that comes out of this is, what is the actual relationship between the United States and Israel? It sometimes appears that Israel just tells the United States what to do, and the United States snaps into line. Another theory is that this is all a feint and a deception, and that really Israel and the United States have the same objective, and it just suits the United States to make it appear that Israel is making the running. There are two commentators, both of whom I very greatly respect for all the insights they have, who take opposite views on this. One is Mearsheimer, John Mearsheimer, who co-wrote a book years ago called The Israel Lobby, and the other is Brian Berletic. He's a commentator who has a podcast called The New Atlas, and Mearsheimer says that it's very simple what the relationship between the US and Israel is. The Israel lobby gets its way because it's able to destroy politicians. So if you're a US politician, congressman, for example, and you start to make remarks critical of Israel, they will destroy you. They will put millions of dollars and potentially billions of dollars into destroying you. They do that simply by finding someone who is not making critical remarks about Israel to run against you, and they will make sure you are primaried if that's a possibility, and they will spend lots of money, and they'll find someone, and they'll groom them, and they'll put them up against you, and they'll usually win. And even if they don't win, you may be financially exhausted by this whole thing. So there is no doubt at all that is at least a partial picture of the truth. That you have this, and it's a self-reinforcing thing, because if anybody starts to say, well, we shouldn't let Israel get away with this, they will become the people who are destroyed. And there are various sort of alternative varieties of this approach. One approach is to find something to blackmail that politician, and it may be something that's totally invented. And a good example of this is Matt Gaetz. They did it to him. They invented something that has now turned out, well, he's never been charged with anything. So it's pretty clear that either they had nothing or couldn't prove it. And he says, of course, they had nothing. They basically destroyed him as a leading contender. He was talked about as a possible president. But it was because he was a bit critical of Israel. Now, the alternative view, so anyway, Mearsheimer says it's simply the lobby, that's it. If you could somehow tame the lobby, Israel wouldn't have any power over the United States. So that's Mearsheimer. Now, Brian Berletic, he says this is all a deception. He says that the US ruling class, in conjunction with their partners, the Israeli ruling class, have a settled plan, and it suits their purposes to make it appear that Israel is blackmailing the US. But really, it's all a settled plan, and so he would say that the present attack on Iran, you know, it wasn't that Israel forced Trump's hand in any way. It wasn't that they happened to persuade him. This is all a long-term plan of the ruling class. So that I'm not sure that either of these extreme positions is correct. I tend to accept Mearsheimer's position more than Belletic's, but I think we're going to find out because of what's now happening. Things are coming to a head in American politics with regard to the state of Israel. You know, the great majority of Americans now think that we ought not to be helping Israel. That and they're appalled, of course, by the genocide and the other Israeli atrocities. One thing I've noticed is they don't seem aware of the fact that Israeli atrocities started no later than 1948. They're not a recent thing. But anyway, that's a bit of education that needs to happen. And this attitude of hostility towards Israel is much greater among young Americans than it is among older Americans. So it looks as though we will reach a point in the not so distant future where this is going to be tested. We're going to find out whether Israel has a permanent stranglehold over American politics or whether it doesn't. And I'm very interested to see the outcome. Any questions?
Looks like Ernie's got one.
I got a bunch of comments here. I enjoyed what you said, and I agree with the sentiment that you have. I think I think everybody in this group, and most people I know, would love to see Trump disappear. I think in this case you're a little bit over-optimistic. I'm not sure that's how it's going to happen. That would be wonderful, but I'm skeptical. On your 3 points, I think, you know, I hate to say it, I think our best hope of having them out before the next election is if one of these, so far there have been 3 people that have tried, but they've all bungled. Okay, if we get somebody who's a competent assassin, maybe that would be the best thing, but we don't. And we haven't so far. I mean, I think they should take all those kids in the class in Butler, Pennsylvania, and give them extra training because these kids didn't do the job. Anyway, that's kind of it's meant to be a humorous.
Yeah, that was a joke.
The 3 points on Vance, I think I kind of disagree. First of all, I don't have any problem with Vance running. I think if he runs, the Republicans will be in worse shape. If that were to happen, he's vice president becoming president, the Republicans will be in worse shape come 2028 because they'll be in a position where they've got an heir apparent that they have to either support or get rid of. If he gets rid of himself, then the Republicans can go out in a very fair manner and find the best Republican to possibly be the Democrats. And so I think Democrats would be better with something if Vance did stay rather than bowing out. And now, as far as the admitting that Iran was a terrible mistake, I don't think anybody has to admit that. We know it, but I think he should make it clear. He said, yes, we should not have let Israel be our king, okay, or our there's the old joke about it, what would the U.S. do for a leader if something happened to Benjamin Netanyahu? I mean, it's so obvious that they're calling the shots on a lot of these things. That should be brought out, and that should be put to an end. In other words, yes, the United States went along with Israel, but basically all those problems over there for the last many years have to do with Israel. I mean, it's not that the Mideast didn't have problems before, but the big problems we've been having for the last 20, 30, 40 years have to do with Israel. And we really need to take more control over that situation rather than letting them take control of us. And as far as your third point was, Israel should be brought to the same level as all countries. Yes, except they should be a little lower. They should be on probation, in my opinion. I'm not sure exactly how that would work, but they would not have full control over their military for some number of years. And then the whole issue of reparations, who pays for the destruction in Palestine, who pays for the destruction in Iran. You know, that's a whole issue that's going to take some time. And I think the most important point you made, David, was the fact that you pointed out that the Middle East, and I've been saying this, and not too many people are saying it, would be better off if Iran had a nuclear weapon. I wish there were no nuclear weapons anyway, but since they're available, any country that wants them probably should be allowed to have them, and there should be no exception to Iran. That exception we're making to Iran strictly has to do with Israel, because people have this insane idea, and everybody at every level, not just the president, but all kinds of people are saying, oh, we can't let them have a weapon, because first thing they'll do is use it on Israel. Well, that's one of the most idiotic statements that you hear in the public domain these days. I mean, are they suicidal? The Iranians may not be geniuses. Well, some of them are, but their system, their leadership is maybe not that great. But they're not suicidal. I mean, not even the guys who think they're going to get 72 virgins if they die are suicidal for the whole country. And if they had nuclear weapons, well, Israel has it would be suicidal. Mutually assured destruction saved the world for many decades. I'll remind everybody here that the only time in history that nuclear weapons have been used in war to destroy property and kill people was in 1945, when there was only one country that had nuclear weapons. The U.S. did not have to worry about having bombs coming back home, okay? Because only the U.S. had them. After other countries started to get them, nobody's used them, and could happen one day that they're used, but it'll be very bad because they'll go in two directions if they do, and it'll be very destructive. And there's pretty much parity if you look around the world. There are the Eastern Bloc, the Eastern countries and the Western countries. A few Western countries, U.S., Great Britain and France have them. On the other side, China and Russia. North Korea is kind of out there on their own. They figured out that they had to have them. They were going to be somebody's bitch, okay? And so they developed nuclear weapons. India and Pakistan balance each other off. The only place where there's an imbalance is in the Middle East, where only one country has nuclear weapons. And it would be much more stable if at least one more country had nuclear weapons. And I really believe that Iran is not only entitled to have it, they're the country that really needs them more than anyone else. Because we cannot count on Israel to be responsible in their use of nuclear weapons. They probably won't attack anyone with them. But you have to think of the scenario. What if Israel did just attack and bomb Tehran and a few other Iranian cities? What would happen? What would we do?
I'm sure the
Probably
Israelis.
Okay, you'll get your turn in a second. Probably nothing. That's my opinion. Now, I may be wrong, and I'd be interested in hearing what other people say. If Israel did bomb Iran, what would happen? We really don't know. Regarding APEC, 94% of the politicians in the U.S., as I understand it, are taking money from APEC, okay? And including my congressman, who I voted for up until now, until I realized how much money he's taking. That's Mike Quibbling, and they're taking money from APEC. But this just gets back. It's a special case of problems we have with our money in our electoral system to begin with. Although I have to say this: if we somehow got rid of APEC, the Israelis would find other ways to get money into the system, and probably I don't know, but that's a big problem. And when you have 94% of them with some debt to APAC, that's a problem.
Hey Ernie, let me pause it there for just a minute because
Okay.
I want to see if David has any response to that.
I've come to a stopping point for the moment.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Yeah, do you have any? That was a lot there. Do you,
I know. But David said a lot. You got and a lot.
What are your What responses do you have? And then Justin, it sounded like you had something to say, so I'll get to
I
you
mean,
right
I
after.
think my responses are pretty obvious. I don't have anything very interesting to say about all that, but obviously we agree to a large extent. I mean, there are certain uncertainties. Sounds like a paradox, but anyway, there are particular uncertainties about the present situation.
Known unknowns.
Yeah, Donald
there you go.
Rumsfeld.
Yeah.
And one of these is this whole question of nuclear weapons. What would happen if, you see, I think it's entirely possible that there is a tacit understanding that if Israel used nuclear weapons against Iran, then Russia would use nuclear weapons against Israel. I think they have a very tight agreement, and it's and of course they don't have to tell the world everything they've agreed.
Putin said that, actually. Putin said that publicly. If Israel
he's implied
uses
it, yes.
he will use it on Israel. You will feel threatened if Israel dares to use nuke in a war.
Mm-hmm.
Russia will feel threatened. Putin had
absolutely,
reasons
yeah.
to use it,
Yeah, I mean,
to threaten it with it.
From a geopolitical point of view, it's obviously in Russia's interest to have a strong Iran. It's not in Russia's interest to have a strong Israel. So, you know, that certain things follow. But let me just mention something you didn't mention, Ernie, and that is this. I didn't mention it, but and that's this whole question. Where we are right now is this blockade. I think it's entirely possible that China will actually have an exchange of fire with the US blockading ships. You know, if there's some oil going through the Gulf to China, the US is sort of holding back. They're not coming really close into the Gulf. You know, in the last meeting we had, I think, would have been the 27th of February. Is that right?
No, March.
It
Didn't we have a
was
March
March. Okay, it was March. But so it wasn't the last meeting we had. But there was a meeting where I said that if they attack Iran, then Iran will sink their battleships. And what happened, in fact, that didn't happen, obviously. And it didn't happen because the US moved its battleships 1,000 miles away from Iran.
Mm-hmm.
And presumably knowing full well there was a big risk that they would be sunk. But you do have this standoff now. This is the you know, the up-to-date situation right now is that the US is saying there, and there's something very strange about all this because Trump at one point was saying we want the free movement through traffic of oil to go through the Gulf of Hormuz, but now he's saying, well, we're going to have a worldwide blockade. In other words, they are contributing to the world crisis caused by lack of oil coming to all kinds of countries, not just China, but Vietnam, India, Indonesia, all these countries, Japan, all these countries which have been using oil that came through the Gulf. And the US is taking the position where we're trying to stop this, which seems to me there's something peculiar about this. First of all, ships are getting through, and so far there have been a couple of cases where the US has stopped them, but that seems to not be not happening right now. So ships are getting through. So what's the plan if it becomes routine that the ships pay $2 million a piece to Iran to allow the ships through? America doesn't like this, partly because the Iranians are getting this money, and partly because ships are getting through, but not US and US allied ships. They're not being allowed through under any circumstances. So the US has this obvious, peculiar sort of quandary. Do they try to loosen up the flow of ships, thus slightly alleviating the world economic crisis, or do they do their utmost to hold up these ships, thus making an enemy of all these countries like Japan, which are really hurting? South Korea is another case, really hurting because of they don't have the oil, you know, so, and that's not going to make. So one of them, this is a big turning point in history, and one of the things that's going to happen, and in some cases it may not happen immediately, is that various countries all over the world that used to be more or less allied with the US are going to become more or less allied with Russia, China, Iran. That's going to happen, and it won't happen. You know, necessarily immediately. Like at the moment, the Gulf states, the Arab states, are leaning more on the US because they're desperate and they need American help. And America's giving them help. And this, presumably, there are conditions on the help America's giving them, like they've got to leave BRICS and things like that. But they're telling them they've got to leave OPEC. So that the first one to leave OPEC is the Emirates. The Emirates have announced they're leaving. Actually, today is the day when they're leaving OPEC. And I think they did that because the US, it was a condition. The US said, we'll give you what you need. We'll give you the swaps for the dollar for your currency. So we'll keep you in the petrodollar, and we'll bail you out of your present predicament. But you've got to obey us on these points. One of which is you've got to leave OPEC. You know, this is what's going. So there are all kinds of ambiguities and uncertainties about this whole business of the American blockade, and it's certainly, if America starts enforcing it rigorously, they're going to make intense enemies all over the world, because people are, you know, the economies in the East are really suffering.
Justin, it sounded like you had something to respond to that Ernie said. Do you remember what that was?
Yeah, I mean, I think Israel understands mutually assured destruction just as much as anybody. I don't think they're... If Iran is going to be... if it's absurd that Iran is not going to use a nuke, then I think it's just equally absurd that, you know, Israel hasn't thought the same things. That's basically...
One thing I was going to mention in response to Ernie, to push back on one of the things he said, which is, you know, like it would be, you know, that the standard line is that as soon as Iran gets a nuke, that the first thing they're going to do is they're going to hit Israel. Like, I've heard that line too over and over. And where I've heard it from most is like boomer conservatives, like the hardcore, like Republican, like neocon, MAGA. It's starting to become like intermingled in a way it didn't used to be. And
there are a lot of people. I watch news 4 hours a day, and you hear a lot of people who are not really totally aligned with them that say that. It's kind
of... Well, the point I'm making is the people who say that believe about Iran that they're a bunch of crazy Islamic jihadists who love nothing more than to bring on the imam or whatever it is that they think that makes them crazy Islamic jihadists, right? And so if they're crazy Islamic jihadists, the whole like more geopolitical rational calculus of things like mutually assured destruction and that doesn't come into play because they're radical Islamic jihadists, right? So they believe that about Iran, so they'll absolutely then believe that it's not a matter of stupidity, it's a matter of a kind of insanity. They'll absolutely believe that Iran would hit Israel, right? Now, I don't believe the crazy Islamic jihadist narrative, so I do believe that what you're saying is correct, that it is stupid, it would be stupid for them to do it, and I think they know that it would be stupid, but the people who don't think that are people who believe, the people who don't think that Iran is operating that way are the people who think that Iran's got that crazy Islamic jihadist narrative running in their heads, and I think that that's wrong. And then one minor pushback I would have about the, Israel wouldn't, just as Iran wouldn't use nukes, Israel wouldn't either. I think they might.
I think they understand. No. I said they understand mutually assured destruction.
Okay. I think Ernie said something about Israel wouldn't use nukes either or something like that.
Well, yeah, I doubt they would, but I don't think they're not totally rational in a lot of ways, and they certainly don't have a very high moral compass in terms of the weapons they use and when they use them.
No, they don't.
So we can't be totally sure that Israel will not use them if they feel free to use them. Okay.
I mean, the United States also has morally dubious.
Yes.
So I mean, can we not be trusted to use nukes? Or
I think there's a difference between Israel and every other nuclear power, and for that matter, almost every other power in terms of how they want to use their military. It's a concern. Nuclear weapons are always a concern. I mean, it could turn out that one of the sane powers at some point gets into a war with one of the other sane powers, but I think it's very, very unlikely because of the clear amount of destruction that would happen to both sides. And I think there is an imbalance here. It's a serious imbalance that Israel has these. And I understand why they wanted them in the first place. They're a little tiny country, 6 million people in a very unfriendly part of the world, and they thought that these weapons would help protect them. And in fact, that isn't really true because you can't really use nuclear weapons. What has protected them is they've had a very, very effective conventional military force all these years. And when they've come up against someone, typically they've ended up on top. In '48, they came out on top, even though the whole Arab world came down on them. The only place I can think of where the Israeli military was beaten was in Lebanon. How many years ago it was? They finally gave up and pulled out. Okay, I don't remember what year that was, but they have such superiority of conventional military over all of their neighbors that they don't, the nuclear weapons are almost superfluous.
Well, they don't have a conventional superiority over Iran.
Well, they seem to. I mean, they pretty much destroyed Iran's missile, what do you call it, the radar and all of the other. They haven't destroyed all of the factories and all of the launchers, but they destroyed them. They weakened them substantially, and they couldn't. I think it would be very difficult for Iran to mount a physical attack on Israel because it's hundreds of miles, and they would be the Israelis would see them coming, and would be able to wipe out a lot of them. So,
but just with missiles, they can attack Israel at will.
Yeah, they can, and they can do some damage. But to really destroy Israel, I mean, let's say that 10% of their missiles or 5% get through, they would have to launch such You know, and it could happen. I mean, it could be that Israel's running out of these missiles because the U.S. is running out of them and not giving them to them. And they maybe, I don't know what kind of missile production capability Israel has, if any.
They rely upon American supplies.
That's what I thought. Yeah, that's my thought. I don't know that that's 100%, but you know, although I don't know. I guess. You know, I don't know. I think that I don't think that Iran really has the capability at will. Now, in certain circumstances, I mean, if the Arab world could ever agree to anything and get together on a project where they're all pulling in the same direction, Israel would have some problems. But Israel has been successful at bringing around the elites in these countries. I don't believe that the people in Jordan and Egypt and Saudi Arabia and all these other countries that are fairly friendly with Israel, I don't believe that the man in the street is in agreement with that. I think it's the elites. The elites are making deal with the elites elsewhere, and the elites know that war is bad for business, and so they want to keep things quiet and, you know, work with Israel. I don't think that the man, and I think that goes into Europe too. I've talked to Europeans who basically say, I've asked them, what is your position on Israel-Palestine? And they say, well, the people support Palestine, but the elites support Israel, right? And that's in Western Europe. So, you know.
One wonders why that's the case.
Yeah, I think because I think the elites know and feel that they've got it good, and business is good now, but a war would not be good for business. Okay, and I think that's, you know, it's an oversimplification, but that's about it. And God knows how much money they're spreading, or they're spreading a lot of money around with APEC here. They're spreading around some money in other countries as well. Okay, and they're good. The Israelis are good salesmen. I mean, they fly. One of the things they do, in addition to giving money to politicians, is they have junkets all the time.
Israel,
they will come see Israel, see what a wonderful country it is, see how great things are. And they probably do that with other countries as well.
Yeah, they do. 100% they do.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear that story about Benjamin Netanyahu was like in Great Britain or something like that, and like he went to the bathroom, and then like afterwards they checked the bathroom and like it was bugged after he had been in there, and it's like, yeah, of course they would do that. Hey David, can I ask you a question about like, so Vance, the three things that just to recap, the three things that Vance must do is declare that he won't run in 2028, state that we're going to put Israel on the same level as all the other foreign nations. What was the other one? I can't remember for some reason. What was the third one?
Well, it's a combination of two. Say that the Iran war was a big mistake.
Oh, say the Iran war was a big mistake.
And agree to the 10 points of...
And agree to the 10 points of the
Iranian program.
How likely do you think that is? And because to me it doesn't seem like that would be super likely, because, you know, Palantir and you know, Peter Thiel, like apparently J.D. Vance was a protege, or like, you know, some kind of like product, you could say, of Peter Thiel and the interests behind him. And my understanding is Palantir has been used, you know, for like targeting in like the Gaza area and stuff like that. Like, so like he's tied in with interests that would seem on the surface to be opposed to the kind of thing you're talking about. So how likely do you think this is?
I'm not confident that he will do these things.
Okay.
I just say he must do.
He must. There it is. Yeah, that's the case. So
I don't think it's totally hopeless cause of thinking that Vance might amount to something.
Yeah.
He's very intelligent, and you know, he has made some one of first, one of the things he said that drew him to Trump's attention before Trump had made him VP was he said that the Ukrainian war was lost. And you know, when hardly anybody was saying that among leading people, you know.
And then, as far as Trump is concerned, what odds are maybe it's before the midterms, maybe it's after the midterms, but you're more likely than not at the very least.
I think it's more likely to happen before the midterms. Yeah.
Okay.
There's no way he will ever do that without going kicking and screaming.
Well,
There's no way.
There are different ways to kick and scream.
No, I mean, he should. It's not in his DNA. I mean, I just can't see him. No matter what, I just can't see him.
Well, I think that
doing that.
Whatever happens, he's got to accept a humiliating defeat, and of course,
there's accepting, and then there's a way of accepting.
Of course, he's going to have a story where it's really a brilliant victory.
Right.
But that applies to whatever he does.
Yeah.
You know. So, you know, but I think that I think that but you know, the thing that clinched it for me was his mental state, which is not just, you know, people who have always been anti-Trump in a big way will say, oh, there's nothing different, he was always like this, but that's not true. I mean, you know, he has always said outrageous things, but generally they were well calculated to help him politically, you know. That's recent utterances. There's been a whole lot of them that are not at all helpful to him politically.
Like swearing and then saying praise be to Allah or something, or
yeah. I mean,
on Easter.
Yeah, all that kind of thing. Yeah.
It was a series of minor strokes, accumulated effects.
It seems something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think it's as bad as?
That's too easy. That's too easy of an out to say.
But the thing is, I think it might have been just one stroke, but it might have been a series of minor strokes. That's right.
That's not uncommon.
Yeah, I mean, there's a different quality. He's now doing and saying. He's saying things which, and he's truthing things which.
Like tweeting, but for his platform.
Yes.
Okay.
Tweeting what?
Truthing. He's truthing.
Oh.
All right, on Truth Social. So he's
He's got to be the only account of note on that platform.
By the way, years ago, I'd have to look back and find it. I made a proposal in a short tweet at the time when it was called Tweets, and of course it had no effect whatsoever on anybody. But now someone with a bigger following has stated it, and other people are talking about it. And you know what my tweet was?
No.
That they should change the name of the immigration and whatever it is.
Oh, nice.
Nice. Yeah.
Immigration Naturalization Service.
We should change it to National Immigration and Service, because then
Ernie,
you'd be arguing against NICE, and nobody can do
I
that.
guess so, but I just, I'm looking for plates here.
That's awesome. I love that. That reminds me. I never put it out anywhere, but I remember thinking when Elon had all these like marketing gimmicks, and I remember thinking at the time that like he just as a joke he should come out with a cologne called Elon's Musk. And it turns out that the Daily Wire actually did eventually have a product that was like a fragrance called Elon's Musk, and I was like, damn it.
Oh man.
so how much Israel? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No.
Well, I have a quick question. How much is Israel's capital is in Jerusalem? How much is still in Tel Aviv? Because I keep seeing
It's mostly
footage
the
bombing
functioning
Tel
capital is
Aviv.
Tel Aviv,
Huh?
I think the functioning capital is Tel Aviv.
Tel Aviv. But what's in?
That's where they have the cabinet meetings.
Okay, that's why that's the target of Iran's missile bombing. Tel
Right.
Aviv. I rarely see the damage or the fire in Jerusalem.
But
It's always Tel Aviv.
Well, you've got to be careful with Jerusalem because
Well, you have all those
whoever
sites,
is responsible for demolishing Al-Aqsa is going to have a billion Muslims at their throats. So.
Well, why is it?
that's why I think why Israel might be in a position to. I mean, if Israel's going to be more fast and loose with weapons, it is because they are on the land where all the Does Russia, with its Orthodox population, want to nuke Jerusalem, or even Muslim? Do Iranians want to nuke Jerusalem?
No, absolutely not. They don't. No, but they may drop missiles, limited missiles on parts of Jerusalem. I mean, one of the things about Iran's missile capability right now is tremendous 100% accuracy, and it's partly because the Russians are giving them, no, the Chinese are giving them all the satellite data.
Yeah, the targeting.
And so I mean, they're pretty good without that, but with that, they're,
I think it's not a matter of giving them; it's a matter of not shutting it off.
That's right.
You can get it from here. You can get it
Yeah,
from
right, yeah.
Finland.
That's right,
you just
yeah.
don't shut it off. So I didn't do anything.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, it's a public service, isn't it?
that's good.
Right.
To let everybody see what the satellites are showing.
Yeah, it's their system. Beidou is arguably more accurate than a GPS system. Russia has their system. Europe has their own system.
So Trump is gonna. You think it's more likely before the midterms. So the odds of him finishing out his complete fourth term are very small.
Yeah, I would say.
Fourth term.
Did I say fourth term?
I just know if you were making a joke or something. or if you misspoke.
I totally brain farted and misspoke. Like a second term, for some reason, fourth, maybe 2024. Maybe that was the number in my head. I don't know. Totally misspoke. But so you don't think maybe it was just 4 years, the full?
No,
4
it's
years.
fine. I just whatever.
I mean,
so
if they've got some wonder drug that is able to reverse his mental problem, then I wouldn't be so confident as I am. But assuming assuming that this recent thing was just a brief interlude and he's going to go back to saying crazy stuff, I think that it's inevitable. Yeah, they're going to get rid of it.
I don't see the difference in this craziness.
Well,
He's just always been crass and saying things that people go, at,
shaking
right,
the
that's
box and
right, yeah.
stuff.
But I mean, if you look at all his early statements, I mean, okay, there were very early statements where he said something about women are all cows or something like that.
and he calls everybody names.
But once he was actually on the campaign
Nasty
trail,
nicknames for
he didn't
people.
say anything quite like that. But he did say outrageous things of a different quality, and they were outrageous things that there would be people all over the country who would say, yeah, good for him. Even the outrageous things, and also there was a point to them. This involvement with the Pope.
You don't think there's a bunch of people that support him in that?
No. Well,
Really?
there may be some, but I don't think they're as big as the number
What
of
about all
people.
the evangelicals that think that that think he's brilliant for bringing about this apocalypse or
Right,
something?
they do. They will think that, but there's their own.
And they're suspicious of the Catholics anyway.
Yeah.
It sounded like you had something.
Yeah, I mean, so Vic, like last month you had told me you were off the Trump train, and David has certainly in the past few weeks, said, "Hey, I'm sorry for supporting Trump," and you guys are smart guys. I mean, couldn't you guys seen his craziness, like him going back on promises to not go to war, based on just how he is? Saying outrageous shit, lying. It's not like the first time he's ever lied. I I mean, him going back on any campaign promise was like I would have saw that 1,000. You know, I would have seen that. You know, so you know, I would have guessed that immediately.
One thing I'll say in my own defense, because I am now on trial and now I have to defend myself, right? One thing I'll say in my own defense was, is I think, and I still think to a large extent, early Trump is the way Scott Adams saw him, which was he was directionally accurate, which was not even a concept I had in my head until he started talking about it, that he can say untrue things, but after all of the dust had settled, you were actually closer to the truth after him having said something untrue than you were before. So, like, you know, the classic example is, you know, I have $50 billion in the bank, and then, you know, some news organization will fact check him. Well, actually, it's only $9 billion. What do people walk away with? They walk away with where they may not have even had an idea before. They might have just known he was generally rich, but they may not have known he was in the billions of dollars category of rich. And so they walk away closer to having a better understanding of what's true as a result of him being, you know, exaggerating and bombastic and all that kind of stuff.
Lying.
I don't think that Trump lies more than, say, Biden. I mean, I think it.
That was the other thing I was going to say. Yeah.
You know, but I think his so-called outrageous statements earlier on in his career were much more effective than these recent ones. But you know, on the thing about the war, when I voted for Trump, it makes me shudder to think of it now. But actually, in mitigation, I would say I'm not convinced that Kamala wouldn't have attacked Iran, and also might have attacked Russia in Ukraine. You know, but still, you know,
that was my main thing with Hillary, because she was like such a warmonger in the way that she talked.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you know, I think. I wouldn't have voted for Trump if I'd known what this Iran thing, but I thought I had good grounds. You know, Trump was very explicit that he was against getting involved in long wars, and I think the weakness was that given his reduced mental capacity in recent months, he was convinced this would be a quick thing. You know, that it would all be over in a week or two. And I think, you know, they convinced him. You know, this guy who's the new head of Mossad, David Benaya, I think his name is, he met Trump and explained all the reasons for thinking that Iran would just collapse. You know, and I think he succeeded in convincing Trump. People like that succeeded in convincing Trump.
I think one thing helped was he just succeeded, tremendous success on Venezuela, capturing Maduro.
Yeah, and
that was fresh off his mind. It was like, yeah, and someone was like egging him on. It's, look what you've done. Look what the Delta forces can do for you, and look at the condition of Iran. You can totally do it. You can pull it off. Maybe it takes a little longer, but you're gonna pull it off. It was like, yeah. I believe the multiple reasons. He's under a lot of pressure for some things, or some blackmail, or some lure thing, or some encouragement. It's just multiple things. It's not easy to be president. Granted, he has some deterioration that's visible, but maybe stress is part of it, and maybe hubris, many things, and he doesn't have a good
hubris.
He doesn't have a
maybe I don't know about that.
Maybe he doesn't have a good health habit. He doesn't stay asleep, or sleeps very irregularly.
He has an amazing
multiple things going on. He doesn't eat healthy. Routine, he doesn't work out. You know? Look at him. He's a mess. So, and the stress. Even in perfect health, a young man, it's very hard to handle the stress that he's in, and multiple forces on him. It's not easy. Of course, he put himself in that he makes it worse for himself, right? I think he lied all the time. It's like he was a charm, because when in early his political career, he lied, but it was so obvious. You would say that's his charm. It's so obvious. It's not a lie. It's just bombastic. But when you lie about when you're lying about war, oh, then people will take it more serious. It won't give you.
I think there's
slack,
I think there
cut
is
the
something
slack
to
on
be
that.
said for like, what is the degree of egregiousness of the lie, right? Are you lying? You know, like that was the thing is people always said like, oh, Trump is the lyingest president who ever existed or something. I'm making that up, but like that's essentially what the message was. You know, like the Washington Post had their like lie, odometer for like how many lies,
that's
and
ridiculous.
keeping like a constant track.
It's
And then
juvenile.
all of a sudden, they decide not to do that anymore when Biden turns president. So we don't have like a basis of comparison to see, like a control to see like, is Trump really worse than the other presidents? Because like, what if Trump had like 10,000 lies in his first term, and then we find out that if they applied the same detection methodology to Biden, Biden's got 15,000. Well, that wouldn't look too good for the narrative that Trump is the super liar of all liars ever. The best liar. Nobody lies like me.
Yeah,
Everybody
you
lies.
know
Those
something.
are the kind of comments.
Right.
Yeah,
You know-
Yeah.
this is the
It's
best
not a
thing
lie.
like,
ever.
do
If
I
I tell you
care?
I have $5 billion, am I lying? Yeah, but it's so obvious, it's not a lie.
Like if Trump's big thing is, one of his big major things besides, art of the deal, and he makes deals and he's the best deal maker of all, right? He's a marketer. Like he's a PR marketing guy.
Right.
That's what he is. So like
As he has been.
is he a liar in the sense that he's a PR marketing guy? Sure, because PR and marketing is just, slick packaged lies to get you to buy stuff. Now, the question is, so if he says things like, I had the biggest inauguration crowd and it turns out not to be true, I don't care that much.
Yeah, it's so
Right.
clear.
What I
But wouldn't
care
the
about...
little lies kind of be a predictor for bigger lies?
in a sort of...
I mean,
Well, you can get him
That's actually a reasonable question. And my answer would be, probably, except we can't examine Trump in a vacuum. We have to examine him compared to anybody else who is on offer. Like, is Trump a uniquely frequent or egregious liar? I don't know. I'm open to the possibility that he is. But, like, if I had any idea that he was going to lie about, if Trump, okay, let me put it this way. Let's say Trump, in an alternate universe, because see, here's I think your argument maybe proves too much. In an alternate universe, everything is the same, except instead of Trump having lied about whether we were going to go to war in Iraq, let's say Trump lied about whether he was like an America First, kind of right-wing populist. Let's say he was a communist. And then he just started going full-on communist. In that alternate universe, you could still sit there and say, well, hey, how did you not see this coming? Because he's such a super liar. He lied about being a MAGA America First Republican. Like, how could you not see that he was a communist all along? Well, like, because like what indicators were there that was like one of the things? It's sort of like the comparison that I've seen, and I totally agree with, which was like Bush 41 and no new taxes sank him. Right, he didn't get a second term, and I think my understanding is that a big reason for that was it was such a core broken campaign promise that there was no recovery from that. This Iran war shit is exactly that. It is a core campaign promise that lots and lots of people, like across the political spectrum, or maybe not too far into the left side of the spectrum, but like plenty of independents and plenty of younger people on the right, they voted for him precisely because he was the no new wars candidate. That was like central messaging. That wasn't like, I've got the best ballroom that I'm building, I've got the biggest crowds, I've got the goldest toilets in my penthouse. Like that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
And I just like the idea that we're supposed to see that shit coming, like, because he says all these little lies. Well, he's a politician.
well, even
And
in his first
politicians-
term, it's not like he was completely non-aggressive in, military matters.
You know what? In fairness to you, like, I wouldn't be surprised if I had maybe, I don't know, I'm not committing to this. But maybe it's possible I had some rose-colored glasses on, and I was not. It wasn't filtering through some of the things that should have clued me in. I mention him every now and then. It seems to be a regular occurrence. But like one of the things I mentioned before is one of the people who did see it, because he was analyzing specific pieces that I wasn't, taking a look at the way he was, is Nick Fuentes. He jumped off the Trump train, like maybe in 2023 or something like that, and it was precisely because he predicted he made very precise predictions. One, the mass deportations were never going to happen, because like you would get, like, the moment you get your first sob story of, like, the kid who got pulled away from the parents or whatever, the media would blow it up, and then Trump would back off because he can't take the heat. And then the other thing was the Iran war. The Iran war, because look at who's donating to him, look at all this kind of stuff, and he said, we're going to get that. And so to the extent that I didn't see it the way somebody like Nick Fuentes did, okay, I suppose that's on me. But like at a certain point, like I can't vote for. Maybe I should have voted for. I couldn't vote for the Libertarian in 2024. Maybe in 2028 I'll vote for the Libertarian. I probably will at that point. I can't. Anybody associated with the current administration, and they don't do like a genuine, like, with reasons, like, I was wrong and here's why and here's how you can be assured that I won't make that. Something. I don't know the precise. That's a Latin thing, right? I don't know the precise translation for that, but I know that basically means like an I'm sorry kind of thing. Sure. I mean, but at the end of the day, I voted, and millions of people voted for the best candidate or the most viable candidate, the least bad option, and turns out that a core campaign promise. This is actually an argument I'm having with a boomer conservative woman that I'm having an argument with her is, we just have to have faith in President Trump, and it's like, what do you
text me her name so if I see if I know her or not.
I'm gonna have some tact. I'm gonna not do that, but I might say it to you, but I'm not gonna text it to you. But so she but so maybe I should have been quicker on the draw. Maybe you can make that argument, but I accepted what he was saying about some of the core things. If he was saying, like, I'm going to promise you that you're going to get $10,000 and I only got 4, you know what? I'm okay with that as a microcosm example. But all right, I've been talking too long. I don't know. So
I remember I was shocked by him the first time doing the thing in Syria. But he kept saying, it's going to be so clean and so fast, and it'll be perfect, and, it was, our guys were so amazing, and it, like, lasted a really short time. He went in and he bombed the airport or something, and I can't even remember what it was about anymore.
Oh, I remember that.
It was
yeah.
really fast, and he did come through and, like, get out, and it was all, like, it could have blown up into something big, but it did what needed to be done.
I think the context wasn't it like they were, like, the narrative was like, like Assad gassed his own people or something like that, and we needed to get back at him or something. I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
But I remember at the time, like, when I first saw that, when I first learned of that, like, some kind of news thing on the phone or on my phone or whatever. And I got a pit in my stomach because, like, I voted against that crap.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, it's the same damn thing.
But it was like he
like there's an expression
talking against it for a long time. I mean, it was like there was lots of pressure to do something.
There's like an expression I've heard a number of times, which I think is funny and probably has more than a few grains of truth to it. It's like, it doesn't matter who you vote for, you always get Netanyahu. You know what I mean? Which I think is hilarious, because, like, and it's like, would Kamala Harris have kept us out of a war in Iran? I don't know. Maybe. Kamala Harris probably would have doubled down on, we need to give more weapons and money to Ukraine. That seems to be something that the left, for some reason, seems to support, like, including my socialist acquaintance that I've mentioned every now and then. Like, he was like, oh, we're not doing enough to help Ukraine. Like, what? Why do we need to? You know, like what is our interest there?
Do we have interest in helping the British during the Battle of Britain, United States?
I don't know. What? You'll have to excuse my ignorance. What historical example is that?
Well, the United States was helping, like, what became the Allies.
Is that World War II or World War
Yeah,
War II.
prior to our entrance into the war. Was that bad? Or is that like a, you know? Because I think like the reason people support Ukraine is they look at it as Russian aggression, and so therefore it's.
But they would be like wrong. They would be 100% totally incorrect wrong. Like I've even heard guys like Scott Horton say like, you know, yeah, I can't support that, or you know, like it's wrong what they did, and I'm thinking like, why is it wrong actually? Like there's only so like I have a gun in my holster. I open my jacket and I show that I have a gun in my holster, and then and I'm looking at Eric, and he doesn't do anything because all I did was just open my jacket. Then I unbuckle or unfasten the holster, and I'm looking at Eric, and he doesn't do anything because I haven't done anything yet. And then I grab the weapon, and I'm not pointing it at anybody. And Eric's looking at me, and I'm looking at him. And I got a furrowed brow, and I'm not looking, right? And then I kind of slowly raise it. Eric's not doing anything. And now I'm pointing it at Eric. At what point is Eric justified in saying, okay, I need to just, like, do something to prevent what is obviously happening, right? So if geopolitically you've got the NATO countries who had previously promised, like, we're not going to move eastward, we promise, take our word for it, we promise, and then one by one, country after country after country gets added to NATO until finally, like, Ukraine is becoming a de facto member of NATO, especially in the wake of the 2014 coup. At what point is Russia going to be like, no, we can't do this? Would we accept that here if, like, there was some kind of, like, Russian or Chinese, because, or Iranian, because we have, the Israel lobby to worry about. If we had some kind of, like, opposing alliance where, like, oh, Mexico is now part of that alliance right on the border of the United States, would we be okay with that? Of course we would not, right? So, like, is it really a war of aggression? Like, do you have to wait until, like, the finger is 3/4 of the way pulled to, on the trigger before you do something
and
about it?
That's why it was okay for George Bush to go into Iraq.
Because
why we gotta wait for them to drop the nukes on us?
George Bush and I mean 2003.
Yeah.
But see that's just it is.
He said Saddam tried to kill my dad.
They tried to convince the American people to use the metaphor that I'm using. They tried to convince the American people that, like, they have a gun and their hands on the trigger and they're pulling it right now, but, like, they didn't even open the jacket. And if you open the jacket, they didn't even have the gun to begin with, right?
But Saddam didn't say he didn't have it. He kept it opaque. Maybe part of him wanted the West or Americans, his enemies, believe he had it.
Right.
So I think it's a little complicated.
No, but I just mean in terms of with the metaphor. I just mean in terms of, like, presenting yourself as an obvious threat, right? Like isn't.
Well, their argument is Ukraine is a sovereign country. Ukraine got to decide who he allied with, and whether he would join NATO, and that they ought to apply to join NATO. That's the legal argument. It's very hard to defeat that legal argument. But the thing is, your analogy, I will add that it's internationally there will be communication. Like, you show your gun, I will tell you, hey, don't do anything more than that. And you will keep progressing, going forward. From showing to put your hand on it, to pull it. Every step of the way, I will tell you, please, don't do that. If you keep doing that, I will have no choice. I really want to talk to you. If we come to some agreement, you start doing that, then I will give you something, you give me something. You keep ignoring me, or you just brush me off, and then I would have Putin wouldn't be doing his job if he hadn't taken action that he had taken.
I remember I think the general idea is that, like, if you do something that puts you at such a serious disadvantage, that puts, the opposing entity at such a serious disadvantage that there really isn't much interpretation for it other than it is a precursor to subsequent aggressive action. I remember when I first learned that one of the deals that I think deals or treaties or agreements or something, one of the protocols that I think Russia has and, like, for example, America has, is that their nuclear capable planes, like bombers and stuff, that they are visible by satellite. They are purposely out and visible by satellite.
Right.
So that
So
everybody,
trust,
so
yeah.
everybody knows. Everybody knows what
Yeah.
everybody's doing. Everybody's got cards on the table,
Yeah.
right? And so everybody can see it, right? What would happen if, and that's the agreement, because, like, if you don't have that, it becomes seriously unstable, and
Well, that's agreement between U.S. and Russia.
Right.
But Ukraine took advantage of it. Hey, I wasn't in an agreement. Ukraine could say legally I wasn't in an agreement. It's between you guys.
And then you make the argument, like, well, okay, which I think you're playing kind of like a devil's advocate. You make the argument.
Yeah, I'm just
Sure.
actually totally legal. It's a legal defense.
Right, but
we weren't in agreement. I wasn't part of the agreement, so there's no violation of the agreement.
no, the thing,
part.
no, but the earlier point you made about, like, well, Ukraine could just say, Ukraine is a sovereign country. What right don't they have to join NATO as a sovereign country?
Well,
and
how
one of
can
the
you
things I
argue
told, because
against
this came up, I think when that guy from Northwestern was at your geopolitical
Yeah,
forum.
yeah. You were there.
Like Alex was, talking something along similar lines, and my response was, like, I don't think you can consider Ukraine a sovereign country when they're basically an outpost of NATO, especially in the wake of 2014 when we did a color revolution in their country. Like,
But legally, they're still member of United Nations.
yeah, you can have letter of the law and spirit of the law distinctions all day long, and this is where the letter of the law says X, but really the spirit of the law is they're not a sovereign country, because if they were, we wouldn't have, color revolution them in 2014. You know what I mean?
I know,
So
but the
after that, what do you call Ukraine, other than an outpost of NATO, right? So why why?
Outpost of NATO? Sweden could be outpost NATO. Finland recently became an outpost of NATO. I mean, there still doesn't contradict the fact that the sovereign nation. And you can say it's a letter versus a spirit, but letter is the law, right? You defend in terms of the letter of the law. I mean, it's pretty.
That interstate commerce clause and that taxation clause and all that stuff is pretty. Raise an army clause.
Of course, when you have, they can do their legal defense all they want, right? But internationally, it's a strength, it's a power that talks, right? So if you have to talk to power, okay, legally you have good standing legally, but hey, you would be stupid or blind to ignore the power part, the reality part, the realism part, realistic part. So you can't ignore Russia. Oh, Russia said, I'm not going to tolerate Ukraine being part of NATO. You say, hey, Ukraine has every right, it's a sovereign country. Then you'll be stupid. You need to talk to Russia, although legally they have no business in that, but realistically they have every business.
This was the other thing that came up in, I don't know if it was the last one or the one before that, where I think it was Alex again who was talking about, like, well, Ukraine had nukes, and my claim at the time was Ukraine never had nukes, in the sense that the nukes that were in Ukrainian territory were never Ukraine's. They were never Ukraine's. It's not like Ukraine had their own independent program and they developed nukes on their own. No, they were Soviet nukes. And once the Soviet Union stuff wrapped up, my understanding is, like, the nukes were probably going to be shipped out of there anyway.
But there's no Soviet Union. You said it belongs to the Soviet Union. But when Soviet Union collapsed, there was no Soviet Union. That's why legally it's up in the air. Is that a legal term? I don't know. But there's no owner anymore. The owner disappears, dies. So who does it belong to?
So ownership
does it belong to Russia?
So law requires ownership.
Maybe you can Russia as a nation inherited some things from Soviet Union legally. That there's a custom. It's a international law. So Russia gets to inherit, like Russia after Bolshevik revolution, they got to inherit something good or bad, treaty or something, from Tsar Russia. And Soviet Union has something from Russia. Now Soviet Union has passed, Russia has something from Soviet Union, but not everything. So I don't know how to argue about the nuclear weapons that's deployed in Ukraine, which was part of the Soviet Union. Now there's no Soviet Union. Where does it belong to? I think it's a gray area. It's about how do you argue, how do you negotiate, and who has power.
Well, there were 3 countries other than Russia itself that had nukes: Kazakhstan, Belarus, and Ukraine. Kazakhstan and Belarus voluntarily gave them up. The West generally supported the weapons going to Russia. I mean, it wasn't going to help the fact that Russia had a few more nukes because they had a lot of them. And they felt it would be more stable if these countries gave them up. And they had the Budapest memorandum. Clinton was president at the time, in '96, I believe, in which we gave assurances. We, the British and the Russians, gave the Ukrainians assurance that if they gave up their nukes, we would protect them.
Yeah.
And of course, that didn't happen. And then, of course, what the United States says, well, we gave assurance. We did not give guarantees. We gave assurance. And it turns out there's no such word as assurance in the Russian or Ukrainian
And also
language.
there's a matter of translation. When you give assurance in Ukrainian or in Russian, there's maybe ambiguity in translation.
Well,
so
they
you're
don't
right. That's
have,
a
they
term
don't have
of
a word. They don't differentiate.
Right.
The assurance guarantee is the same thing. They felt they were guaranteed, and they
So,
were. You know, we did a little slick lawyering there as well.
He said we.
What?
He corrected me when I said we.
Oh.
I said he should correct you as well to be consistent. Otherwise, he's picking on me for some reason.
We what? I'm sorry, I lost the context.
No,
Wait, when did I
you don't have to ask him. He thinks it's funny.
I don't remember, but I probably, whatever you're thinking, I probably did it. I don't remember what it was.
You have to ask him why it's funny, but you have to.
But like, what do you, David? What do you think about the Ukraine stuff and, you know, special military operation? Was it justified? You know, it's getting a little further afield from the original thing, but, you know, what do you think about like Russia's? Do you think they were justified? Do you think it was bad that they did it? What should they have done if not that?
I think they were justified, yes.
Yeah, I thought so too.
In what? In going into the Donbass or into Crimea?
Both.
Donbass.
Yeah.
Crimea's earlier.
Crimea, there was a vote, and 75% of the people wanted to go with Russia because they were Russian.
And because they were getting shelled by West Ukraine.
What's that?
And because they were getting shelled and attacked by West Ukraine.
Who was getting the Crimeans?
Yeah, the 2 oblasts or the 2.
Oh yeah. Well, there was a revolution. Yeah, there were people in the east, I guess, that wanted to go with Russia. I don't know that much about that. Maybe somebody does. There was a bit of a civil war going on, and the Russians sent the little green men in to help. And there's still a question. Art, who is from Russia, I talked to him about this. I said that there's still more Ukrainians in eastern Ukraine than there are Russians. And if they had an honest election, it would still stay with Ukraine. And he claims that's not true. He claims that at some point, the Ukrainians, Western Ukraine, sent lots of their people into that part of the country to, affect the population spread. That's what he claims. Okay.
Wouldn't surprise me.
And he said, well, they did it because they were sending people in to, I don't know, quell the revolution or whatever. And I don't know. I think it's very difficult to know.
Justin, it looked like you had something to say.
Yeah, I was gonna leave in just a few minutes, but totally kind of change of subject slightly. I know that David, your Orwell guy, Have you heard of the new adaptation of Animal Farm? It's Andy Serkis, the who played Gollum.
My precious.
Gollum in the Lord of the Rings directed a CGI adaptation of Animal Farm that just opened today, actually, on May Day.
Oh.
And apparently it's got bad reviews and butchers the source material.
Ah, that's too bad. Butchers it in what way?
Like the antagonist is not the farmer, but like a Elon Musk type.
Oh,
It's like modern. It's been modernized and all this other stuff. And apparently, the original animated adaptation got assistance from the CIA. At least according to some things I've read. I don't know if that's actually true. But.
Interesting. I actually have a copy of that on DVD somewhere.
You can stream it for free on Tubi. It's pretty. I guess the rights were pretty easy to license.
I remember watching that and I was thinking like this is that one was actually pretty faithful to the source material.
It was pretty faithful, and the animation was pretty good for the 50s. It looked like Disney level quality animation for that time.
Wasn't the worst one Napoleon? The worst pig? Wasn't he the worst guy?
He was isn't he the pig that... I mean, it's been a minute since I've...
Yeah, it's been a minute for me too.
Sides with the humans.
Like, and then there was like Napoleon, there was Snowball, there were a few others, I can't remember.
Oh, that's good. I couldn't remember those until you said them.
Yeah. I remember the dog was smart, the mule was smart, the horse was dumb. He was just a workhorse, and you just appeal to the patriotism of the farm, and that could get him to do the thing. And then I remember the scene at the end where it's like, and then, they looked in the window and they couldn't tell which was which. And it's like, ooh, that hurts so bad. Like, that's so bad. Like, if you want a downer, that's a downer right there. But, so you, for the people who say, like, it wasn't justified or it was wrong what they did, if you had to steel man their argument, what would you come up with? Yeah, so steelman, have you ever heard that term?
Mm-hmm. No,
okay.
it's just...
Oh, I got it. Okay.
Steele with an E hyphen man.
If you were going to steel man the argument why it was wrong in a more moral sense, or it was unjust, what would you come up with? For like...
So what is, who am I supposed to be steel manning?
So like any number of people, but there's some libertarian types who understandably say like, oh, that what the Russian special military operation was an act of aggression and they shouldn't have done it. They were wrong to do it. So what would your steel man of their argument be, given that you do think they were justified in what they did?
Well, I mean, they were under a lot of provocation, right?
Who was? Russia was?
Russia.
Right, but if you were going to argue for why it was wrong for Russia to do it, what would you come up with if you had to?
Why it was wrong for Russia? I can't imagine anything being
okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Because it was violent and people got hurt. Sorry, I'm a pacifist.
That's okay. That's okay.
Because it just caused destruction and misery for people.
I mean,
what's that worth?
I think part of the issue, though, is you could argue that by causing destruction and misery at that smaller scale, it actually prevents greater scale destruction and misery because they nip something in the bud before it kicks off.
Yeah, that sounds like a typically male point of view. Okay, never mind.
Don't make me dip into my 19th Amendment stuff.
We say you're great, you're awesome, we love you, but I just don't think you can vote because you're a woman.
Shut up.
No, he's trying to channel what I might be tempted to say.
But that's what he really believes, though. So I mean, he'll give you all the compliments in the world and think you're awesome, but he doesn't think you should vote. So I mean, just remember that.
I think it's I have my opinions on the whole, if we could, you know, like,
You guys can
I'm not
break
even
bread
sure-
together and drink wine together, but he doesn't think you should vote.
I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure all men should vote. I think it should be.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Very good.
It
It
should
comes
be an
full
IQ
circle.
test or something.
What's that?
How would you?
Like I'm okay with didn't it start out in this country as, you know, landed property owners?
Yeah.
Male landed property.
So like and back then when you had a more conservative
Yeah.
social
Where's this
environment, like
going?
it was the male because the male was the head of the household and
Yes.
you know that kind of thing. And it makes sense that it was a household got a vote instead of just, you know, at one man, one vote, because like the household, you've established yourself, you've shown that you're a part of the community, you are independent and, you know, that kind of thing. Like, maybe there should be criteria for who can
You
vote.
work,
and who
you
can't.
get taxed,
Absolutely agree with
the
that.
government oppresses you, but you can't vote. Sorry.
Yeah.
So
Later.
if you're not, only Communist Party members
See you
get to
later.
vote. That's what I'm saying. So we're saying the same thing, but on the detail level, we're saying different criteria.
The same,
Only
so
Communist
the
Party
same,
members.
so the thing, so what you're saying, the same thing in principle,
In
just that,
principle,
you know,
right.
different uniforms and flags.
Right, universal suffrage is ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. It's
But
so
as
bad.
to
It's so
how
bad.
you narrow down or how do you qualify people to vote, we have different qualifications or
It's-
criteria.
It's so bad. It's so
Well,
bad.
so-
It will lead to. If it can't be reined in some respect, like it's just going to lead to collapse. It eventually leads to collapse.
One of the reasons we have Trump is because, and he brags about this, he gets most of the votes from the undereducated. And I guess I'm a little prejudiced. I think that the people who are educated should have, if anything, an edge. And but he understands. I mean, he understands the electorate, and that's why he was elected twice.
True. True. If one was going to counter like I would respond by saying, but the educated classes, like, you know, we've got, you know, aside from the things like, you know, DEI and do we really have a merit-based system in this country, aside from those things which are serious,
Yeah.
I think who came up with the expression like some ideas are so stupid only an intellectual could believe them, right? Who came up with that? Somebody came up with that, and it's like, you know, and I don't really have a lot of respect for this guy, but wasn't it William F. Buckley who said something famously like, you know, I would rather choose 1,000 random names out of the phone book to govern me than, I'm paraphrasing badly, I'd rather choose 1,000 random names from the phone book to put in government than, you know, the faculty of Harvard or something like that, right? Now
Where is
maybe
he graduate
wasn't he a
from,
Princeton
Yale?
guy? So maybe he just or Yale or
Princeton
something
guy?
like that. So maybe it's just like, you know,
That's a rivalry thing.
yeah, maybe that's just like a school rivalry thing. But you know, aside from that, like, you know, sometimes the educated and the elites they can get way too separate from and detached from and disconnected from the rest of society, and they might not, you know, sort of like. I'm trying to think of a good example, and I can't. But like, a general example might be somebody who has a lot of money, and then they're giving advice to, let's say, somebody whose, you know, financial means are much more modest, and some of the advice might be very financially taxing,
Yeah.
but they don't know the impact of that because they're rich.
Yeah.
And so they're telling the less rich person, just do this thing that I as a rich person can do. And the less rich person's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, so there can be a financial disconnection, there can be an educational disconnection. Like, what does, like, a random, you know, humanities academic in the Ivy League, what do they really know about, you know, a coal miner and, you know, industrialization policy and stuff like that, unless they actually studied it
Yeah.
in their
many
degree?
cases
They probably don't know that much,
They don't. Yeah.
you know, is my guess. And so do we really want them making decisions for, like, everybody? You know, this is why decentralization is ideal, is because you don't have to worry about, like, the educated elite classes. You know, like, I think there was something to be said for, a much more decentralized thing back in the day. Now, Articles of Confederation, my understanding is it didn't work because it was too decentralized. But regardless, decentralization is important because, like, why do you want, like, one body or one person, like a president, governing, like hundreds of millions of people with that much power at that level? Like, I don't want an educated class determining for everybody how things have to go.
We essentially already have that, because all but 30 or 40 of the 535 members of Congress have college degrees. So they're at least at that level. And also, most of them are substantially wealthier. I mean,
especially after getting into Congress.
Yeah,
that helps. That adds to it. But yes, and so we already have a certain amount of that. And I think Trump realized that, and others have realized that, there's a big untapped resource of voters who don't relate to that. But I think that in the long run, having people who are intelligent and educated and knowledgeable. I mean, I think we probably should have a test. Of course, the word having a test before you can vote immediately raises people's hackles, because they think about the South, where tests like that were used to push black people out. Okay, but a test in which people, anybody can spend the time they want to learn about politics. Or a lot of people have no idea who their congressman is or who their alderman is or anything. And I really think it makes sense to kind of have some knowledge of what's going on and how things are done.
That's fair.
Yeah, and the schools try and teach a little bit of civics, so people know, most people know we have 3 branches of government, and we have a Congress and a president and a Supreme Court and this and that. They know a few things, but they don't really understand. The biggest problem is economics. People do not understand economics, and so when Trump does something
people in
like
government don't understand it either.
Well, a lot of people, that's true. A lot of them don't have a good understanding. And so, when Trump puts in his tariff idea, people don't understand. I mean, one of the few things that most economists agree on, and economists are not people to agree with each other in many cases, is the fact that tariffs are generally not good. They serve a purpose here and there, but generally they're not good. But nobody understands why. I think the average voter should understand supply and demand at least, and they may have a very vague understanding of that. But again, I think we should start teaching economics in kindergarten. Okay?
Or we should just go back to
right all the way.
Who's going to teach that? The teachers are not trained.
Yeah,
well, no,
right.
when I say economics for kindergartners, I'm not talking about using differential equations to analyze data. I'm talking about,
okay.
Like you get the big toy and the small toy, and then you get so many chips.
That's right.
That kind of thing.
And the girls, you're out. Okay, go play with dolls. Okay, this lesson is for boys only.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna vote.
Yeah.
The girls, you can relax.
But
no, I'm just paraphrasing.
I'm keeping notes.
Vic, not my opinion.
That's
well,
funny.
I mean, these things have changed, and I think they will continue to change. But I really think that who was it? Jefferson said that for a democracy to vote to work, we have to have I don't know if he used the word educated, but an informed electorate.
Yeah.
I don't know his exact word. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Jefferson said that. I don't know what it is. Basically,
Anybody can say that.
Huh?
Anybody can say that. Anybody can say that.
Yeah, I know. But Jefferson.
Right, because Jefferson blazed the trail.
Must be
But
true.
who
Yeah, okay,
decides
right.
is the problem. Gets to the crux of the whole libertarian thing. Who decides?
That's true.
When you have people making judgments over you, that's problematic.
Which is why, I'm still mostly attracted to the Libertarian Project, which is part of it is to strip from government the ability to decide at all in as many arenas as possible, right? So, like, when you do that, then it almost becomes a moot point who's serving in power because they're so restricted and constrained on what they can do because a libertarian system with institutions and guardrails and restrictions is in place to prevent all kinds of bad crap from happening, right?
Yeah.
So, this is what, once we have a libertarian system, maybe we can, maybe we can put the 19th Amendment back in, you know what I mean? But until then, somebody asked me, like, I can't remember where I was talking about this, but one of the things I mentioned was, one of the big things about, and I don't want to go on a whole rant about the 19th or anything, but one of the things I mentioned was, I really, really can't stand it that, the most important, arguably the most important, to my mind, the most important collective decision that a political entity makes is who to fight with, meaning going to war. That's arguably the most consequential decision that a political entity makes. Who fights those wars? I think I might have mentioned this once or twice in the past at one of these seminars, but who fights those wars? It's men. Men disproportionately shoulder that burden. But people who don't, who disproportionately are exempt from shouldering that burden have just as much say as the people who disproportionately, I wouldn't expect, if there was some kind of garbage man democracy, a waste management democracy. I'm not in waste management. I would not presume to tell the waste management people how to do their thing necessarily. That's a stupid example. I don't know.
But who are the mothers and the wives of the people that go? You don't think it can matters to them? Who keeps things going while men are gone?
It does matter to them.
Who holds things together?
I'm reminded of it. You're not doing this. I'm not saying you're doing this, but I'm simply reminded of it's actually a meme. There was I don't know if it was an interview or podcast, whatever it was. Hillary Clinton was talking about something war. It was
compare me to Hillary Clinton.
I'm not comparing you to Hillary Clinton. I'm merely just saying I'm reminded for some reason that you're much better than Hillary Clinton, right? I'm just reminded it was something having to do with war, and her argument was women are most effective, because they're the mothers, they're the all this kind of, they're the wives, the mothers, and all that. And it's okay, that's not unimportant. That's very, very important. But the reason why it's a meme and people crack that joke is because it's she's doing that thing where she's just doing that thing. And it's no, the biggest impact is on the men who no longer get to live because they get put into the meat grinder of war,
Yeah.
And so, okay, I'm willing to do a compromise. Men get 3 points that they can allocate to their voting, and women can get 1. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's how it works.
Yeah, way to vote.
Women can vote. But their votes just don't count as much because they don't have as much skin in the game, right?
Yeah, I think
But
that's
skin
fair.
in what game is also a problem. But I think a point system would be
But
a great idea. And there would be factors for education and general intelligence, and then also specific tests. I don't have a problem that people should be taking tests.
Yeah.
That could just be
That
so
they understand
manipulated.
the basics of government or
That
the
is-
basics of economics.
She brings up a good point, though, is that what we're talking about is that it can be so easily manipulated. And, so that would be a practical objection that's important to consider and might even be enough to say that that's a bad idea. I'm only talking in principle theoretically. Imagine you didn't have the practical thing to worry about, that it can be manipulated or corrupted.
Well,
how do you
would it
manipulate
be just
it or
would it be
corrupt it?
just in theory? And I think it would. But the practical objections might be sufficient to say it's a bad idea because it would not be working.
How would it be? I don't understand what manipulation you're talking about. You mean manipulating the questions so that they, or
Yeah, any kind of a test,
yeah.
any kind of criteria
Well, this complaint has gone on for a long time that tests favor one group over another. And I think it gets to the point where, we're at the point now where a relatively unbiased test can be created. Who is your congressman? Okay. Who is your senator? basically what does the Senate do and what does the House do, what does the President do, a few of these things. And economics. Really, economics is an even bigger issue, in my opinion, than the functions of government. People don't understand economics, and you know, if people don't understand economics, they're going to lean toward bad choices, and or if they don't understand the science and the environmental area. People only have a very basic understanding of the science and should have a better understanding of the science.
That's right. That
if
global
they're going to vote.
Right,
if you're going to vote on issues that affect the environment, you should know something about the environment.
Yeah, global warming is fake, and people need to be educated about that.
Well, that you see now yeah, at least you're saying people should be educated. I agree with that. I don't necessarily agree that it's fake, but certainly
it's
the
totally
people
fake.
who think it's fake can present their evidence, and the people who think it's not fake, the scientists, can present their evidence.
It's totally fake. In fact, I've been to one or two presentations at the college of complexes where David presented the case for why it's not actually global warming, it's global cooling that we need to worry about.
It's a video
When
that
was
he
that?
A long time ago.
made. Video he
Yeah.
made.
I missed that
So
one.
what were you gonna say earlier? Do you
Well,
remember?
the consequence of restricting voters to educated people is to benefit the left, because most educated people are left.
Or what? Left. Oh, left.
Yeah, those professors. Those,
Yeah.
social sciences.
Many are. Yeah, it's true. Higher education and the press, they tend to be to the left. So, you know, that's an issue. But
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that, like, there's one guy who lives in Pennsylvania that I'm in regular contact with, and he keeps sending me stuff about, or every now and then, that keeps sending me is a bit too much. Every now and then he'll send me stuff that that sort of like reflects something that Richard Hanania wrote, which I think was like a Substack post, like that highlights the difference between like liberals and conservatives, or the broadly left and the broadly right, which is liberals read and conservatives watch TV, right? That was something along those lines, and I think that what you're saying reflects that, or that's they're sort of related, you know, and you know the question becomes, well, all right, what do we mean by educated? Because wasn't there like a Mark Twain quote, like, don't let schooling get in the way of your education?
Yeah.
Right? So are we talking about schooling with credentials, or are we talking about genuine education, intelligence, and knowledge, right? Because you can get that without going to, you know, and in fact, I think there's going to be more and more people who, they look at the value proposition of getting a credential at a university these days, and they'll say, like, that is not worth it. And in fact, a guy, you know, criticize him for all kinds of different things, as you may, but a guy like Peter Thiel, I think, even has programs to attract people to his companies or organizations or whatever, to like, hey, skip college, come work for me, we'll teach you stuff, you know, if you're smart and you got like, so there might be a parallel system of establishing like who has like knowledge / intellectual merit outside of the, you know, established credentialing institutions like universities, right? So, you know, if we're talking about like the established credentials, like, yeah, that benefits the left because they've taken that over. They had that long.
Yeah, that's their system now.
That's their system now.
Yeah.
So it is going to benefit the left.
Right.
Does that mean, which I think a lot of people try to say, does that mean that the left is smarter than the right? I don't think it means
They book
that.
smart.
It might be the case that the left is smarter than the right, broadly speaking. It might be
probably.
true.
Maybe.
But that point about, you know, who's more educated, I don't think gets you there. Or it's not enough to get you there, if you get my point. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. In fact, you know, it's funny, like, when you take a look at the left, you know, yeah, it's probably a lot of elites, and, you know, they can have these luxury beliefs that allows them to
Right,
be.
right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think that there's something very unconvincing about attempts to limit the franchise,
Okay.
because whereas having all adults having the vote it has a kind of
Simplicity.
yeah. I mean, it's sort of it's so difficult to argue for limiting the franchise. By the way, one thing I found, I didn't know this. For many years, the minimum legal voting age in Iran was 15.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
and very recently it was raised to 18. 2 or 3 years ago.
Interesting.
But anyway, yeah, I mean, I think this is why I say it's that democracy has a strong appeal to being legitimate, because you say, what could be more, you know, we'll ask everybody who wants to vote. Of course, in some countries you're compelled to vote. But anyway, leave that aside. I mean,
I think Australia is one of those.
yeah, I think it was
Yeah, sometimes.
Australia. I heard it of. But you know, you're always going to get discontent from those who can't vote, you know, and would like to. And
Well, you know, they're living a life in that country. Their life is just as worth as anybody else. I mean,
right. Well, that's the sort of intuitive argument that is difficult to combat.
Difficult to combat in a.
In the sense that getting people to generally accept it.
Right. Right.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this
You're right.
is legitimacy. You know.
But if we get that, but if we're at that point, and I think we're probably past that point, whichever founding father, it could have been Jefferson, it could have been Franklin, I don't know, but whoever said, like, and I'm paraphrasing, you know, it all goes south. Paraphrasing very badly. It goes south when the people recognize that they can vote themselves a treasury, right? Like, voting is almost like a sacred duty if, you know, we were in an ideal circumstance. Like, your vote was sacred, like, you took it with you treated it with the gravity it deserved, right? Like, because, like, history is based on, like, assuming things aren't, like, rigged and fraudulent, right? History is decided in the voting booth to a certain extent, right? So it should be like a big gravity serious thing. But there are people who, you know, there are people who will vote for a candidate who promises them the Obama phone. Why do I want them participating when they're voting for Obama phones or they're voting for SNAP? Like, and they don't care where it comes from. Or like in New York, you know, they're going to start raising property taxes, you know, on, you know, primary residences because, you know, those are rich people.
because you can.
Because you can, and you know, this is one of the things in the exchange with the socialist acquaintance is I pointed out how Mamdani was talking about that they were going to tax white people's property, and he literally
What?
said something along those
He
lines.
said that?
Yeah, he did, and his response was to try to steel man it, which was it was unconvincing. Well, it's the white people who have the money. It's the white people who have the money, so it's more about, like, we need to tax the people who have the wealth and the money, not so much that they're white. And I'm like, then why did he even run his mouth about it? Why run your mouth about it being white people, right?
Yeah, it's
So, and then, like, you know, the thing I pointed out in the email discussion a couple months back, you know, where, you know, Mamdani is an immigrant, and, you know, immigrant votes brought him in, and he's a socialist bordering on communist. Immigrant votes brought him in. Like, they ran the numbers, and if foreign-born New Yorkers were not able to vote, Mamdani would not have won.
Yeah.
Right? Why do I want a bunch of, you know, foreign-born people voting in elections?
He has five
Like-
fingers pointing at me. He was like this. What about the non-foreign foreign born guys?
I'm just
Wait,
putting my
that-
hand out. I'm not
that-
pointing.
I'm
Larry,
that's-
right?
A better
I
way-
can't
All
do
5
this.
fingers are pointing in my way.
Right.
a better
I'm the only
way-
one here. Hey, yeah, I'm the only one
That's
here.
okay. That's well. It depends what you mean. Foreign born, or with the green cards, or foreign immigrants that are not legal. Because
I don't remember if they broke those numbers down.
because that's been a problem, and that's it's mind-boggling to me that that's even an issue. That people who are not actually legal in this country can vote. I mean, has that ever?
I don't know
been a
if
thing that
they
you
were
can?
I don't know if they were necessarily illegal. I do remember reading something a while back about, like, New York. There were a few jurisdictions in the country where they wanted to make it where non-citizens could vote in local elections only, and I think New York was one of them. They tried to pull that off in D.C. I think maybe they did, and maybe a couple of places in California. And I'm just like, why? But,
Yeah, I can't believe that you could ever do that.
well,
Well, the argument would be that, things like the roads and the lamps and the housing conditions and all that, they concern people who are not citizens just as much as people who are citizens.
No, I'm not talking
If you pay
citizens. I'm talking
taxes.
about illegal.
I mean, if you pay taxes, if some of them even go to military, like before they get their green card, not even citizenship. If you join the military, you get on a fast track. So
How can you join the
if you
military
serve
if
in the
you're not
military, if you
not-
pay taxes, I would argue you should be able to
Yeah, but
vote.
how can someone who is not legally certified in this country be in the military, of all things?
I don't know. You
That
can
makes
look it up.
absolutely no sense.
I know, absolutely.
Well, they're
Before
even more
citizenship,
Right.
you can be a legal resident, but you don't have a citizenship.
Yeah,
But you're eligible for military service. If you go to military, you
Like
get
green
fast
card,
track
you
to
mean.
your, that citizenship I know for a fact. But green card maybe, I don't know all the facts. Maybe it's green card too, because for us, I know for us, and green card is a big deal, bigger than citizenship. So it's motivates a lot of people not even have green card, I mean permanent residents, to join military because that put them on the fast track, fast
yeah.
track. So yeah, from that reason, without knowing
Just like
sure
brownie
about all the
points.
facts, yeah. So if you serve in the military, which more than you have contributed, right, and pay their taxes, right, he's more eligible from that point of view, more eligible than you, Vic, to vote,
Yeah, there you
right?
go.
But
No,
consider
no,
this.
that's fine. That's fine. But I'm just talking about. You said, well, I don't know what you meant by immigrants exactly. If you
Right,
meant
that's a
illegal
very loose,
immigrants
or
as
migrants.
opposed to- migrants.
Well,
yeah, I don't know.
consider this about the vote. Since we all agree, it's so hard to take the vote back, right? Because now that you have universal suffrage, it's hard to take it back from some people. It's so hard. So consider this: you only everybody has the vote. Still, we keep it universal, but you only get to vote on the ground level, on the most grassroots level, if you will. So you and I only vote for your
Mayor.
state assembly
Oh, okay.
and city assembly and mayor, right? But for them to my representative on my district, the local level, get to vote for the representative up next level. Up next level, those representatives get to vote up next level, who gets to vote for president.
Right.
Something like that. Instead of me directly vote for president, who covers the whole country. I live in Chicago. Or someone lives in Chicago, busy with not have knowledge of all those things, and they have their own business to attend to, family to attend to. It's too much to ask them to think about the federal issues, international issues, foreign affairs, economics, macroeconomics. So it's too much to ask for average person to attend to those things. So you don't let them vote on that level. You let them vote on what local level where street to this, where you should put a street light, where you should fix something, who you think is a better alderman to take care of
Yeah.
your neighborhood. You vote on that level. So that way we don't have to take back. It's already universal suffrage. We don't have to take back. We just limit them to vote on the ground level. I think that's pretty reasonable. That's actually a system that China has. But the China has that system that they have their problem too, because that's the system set up that way. But the problem is that the implementation, because only the Communist Party gets to manipulate. Although every citizen, whether party members or not, you get to vote. But because the Communist Party, they have leverage, they have power, they get to manipulate certain ways.
Yeah.
Even though you're a party member, you're one vote, a non-party member, one vote, but because you have more leeway, you have more influence or power,
Yeah.
you get to decide a lot of things behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So ends up non-party members are shortchanged. It's not equal vote, but the system is set up that way. So what's to stop the system from doing its full force to make it equal, sensible vote for the good of the country? You have to have multi-party system instead of just one party.
Yeah.
You have to have separation of powers as opposed to just one. Those are the things that they face, the challenge that they face, how to make the system better, how to make it legitimate.
Yeah.
Basically, it comes down to legitimacy. How to make it legitimate, how much power you, as a party, as a Communist Party, willing to give up, share with other people. That's a big challenge, big debate within the party.
Oh.
And they debate that all the time, they change all the time. So when you say, well, the system, the US system, as it is, cannot sustain, it's going to collapse one day, that's assuming we never change, right? You guys never change.
Right, I'm
But it will be like very stupid to not change. The U.S. has underwent a lot of changes throughout the history, although more recently it's kind of ossified. I can see a little ossifying more recent, especially things like, we don't want to generalize, right? For the universal suffrage, it can only go one way, right? If you go one way, it's progress, but if you want to pull back, you say, oh, wait, it's not sustainable. We see a lot of problems. It's been universal since 1920s or something like that, or 1960s. Oh, it's been like 70 years. We see a lot of drawbacks. Now we want to pull back a little bit. We want to readjust the rate. I know you can. So that's an ossification. You know, we can't generalize. Some things are more fluid, you can pull back, but some things happen to be fundamental, important things, you can pull back. So, but let's not be too pessimistic. We still give some hope that we can somehow kind of wise up. But my consideration, if U.S. adopts the system that I described, you only vote for your level. Your level will vote for next level. Someone who said, hey, I have more time, I'm more interested in politics, I know economics, I get to run. I get to run.
Right.
You say, hey, for 5 of us, right? I can say all 5 of us don't have knowledge on the federal level, right? For maybe two of us or 1 of us, you haven't have. You're not satisfied have the same vote as Eric, who knows nothing, can only vote on the local level. You can run for the representative of me, right? Or even 2 levels up, right? So I think that level is better. I think the U.S. can bring themselves to that level. Then you don't have to take back the universal suffrage, but you 1 level at a time. The level votes for the next level.
But see, here's the thing. A couple of things. One, we had a America had. Shut up. America had a flavor of that before they passed, what was it, the 22nd Amendment or something like that? We had a flavor of that where we
Senators vote for president.
Right. We voted for our state government, and then the state government voted for senators, right? Like, we had some of that. So if we went back to that, that would be a kind of regress, and we don't like
yeah,
that.
that doesn't look very good for
You know,
some
that's
people,
that's
yeah.
not going to be
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
persuasive.
Oh well, that's
You know.
so you
Yeah.
just justify your pessimism.
I'm just
I can argue.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
I know.
You know,
I know.
there's a couple
I'm
of
always,
things like
looking for
there's a-
things
there's
to
a
be
comedian-
optimistic about.
there was a comedian, Sam Hyde,
Oh,
in something. Have you heard of Sam Hyde?
that sounds familiar.
He used to. I don't know if you've ever seen the show that they used to have years ago on, I think, Adult Swim, which was the nighttime version of Cartoon Network, maybe.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
He used to have a show called $1 Million Extreme World Peace or something like that.
Oh.
It was a kind of out there, very. I don't know if I don't know, avant-garde maybe. I don't know. Very edgy kind of stuff, very out there. But he is fairly prominent these days on YouTube. Like, he had a video where it was like a Dear Elon video, I think, at one point, maybe over a year ago, that got over 1 million views on YouTube. He's interviewed some heavy hitters like Nick Fuentes, I think MMA. There's a number of people that he's interviewed. I don't watch his stuff all the time. Anyway, he was just talking to one of his old buddies from the $1 Million Extreme program that they did back in the day, and it had to do with like the migration crisis in Europe or something like that, or maybe specifically like England or Sweden or something like that. And you know, like the one guy was, you know, Sam Hyde was saying, you know, like, so, you know, the other guy was saying, so like, you know, how are we going to get them to stop coming? He's like, well, it's either going to be a political collapse or we have to remove political agency from women. Those are the only two options. Yeah, that's what he says. And he dropped it so matter-of-factly that it was persuasive in the way he delivered it. It's either going to be political collapse or, you know, removal of political agency from women. Maybe.
What does
Maybe.
that have to do with anything? That's ridiculous. Okay, forget it.
No, that's
Regard
okay.
What he was saying, that's basically a parliamentary, or a version of a parliamentary
It's the
system.
Chinese system.
Well, what? Okay, but isn't the parliamentary system you vote for your MP and then they vote for the prime minister?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's just a two-level, and
Yeah, but that's
he's
not
talking about
that's
a
not what
multi-level.
Eric's talking about at all. That's something totally different.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little different.
I didn't understand. Okay. Okay.
Many more levels.
But anyway, what I was going to say was.
Oh,
that,
yeah, I'm sorry.
From a libertarian point of view, the thing would be anybody who is a recipient of government income cannot vote. And that would be
Until we get off of it.
welfare recipients and government employees. Now you could also, a variant on that would be, although it's almost the same, would be only if you're a net taxpayer do you have a vote. So if you're a net drain on the government, either through a salary from the government or from a welfare check.
What about government contracts?
Yeah, okay, that too. Any income from the government disqualifies you. You can't vote.
Or the soldiers.
Right, but soldiers wouldn't be able to vote because they're getting their income
So
from the
they
government.
put their
I
lives
mean,
on
they'd
the
be able to
line
vote before they
for
were
you to
before
vote.
they were signed up as a soldier. Yeah, but I mean that. So it's the reverse of what the American Revolutionaries said. They said no taxation without representation. So this would be no representation without taxation.
I'd be okay with that.
And then you'd have, you know, because why should someone who's got a government job be able to vote in favour of keeping that government job?
Right. Conflict of interest. It's straight up
Yeah,
conflict of interest. That's what that is.
But if you work for the city government, does it mean you're not eligible to vote for the state senate or federal
Oh,
Congress?
you know, there are
House?
details to be figured out. I leave those to my my clerks.
I know, I get the gist. Yeah, it's just
You're the high level, you know,
Yeah,
30,000.
Right,
I'm the visionary.
let other people to figure out those nitty gritty.
Let the managers and bureaucrats figure out the
Right, right.
details.
There isn't any way you can legislate out corruption.
No, but you can do less to encourage it.
Right, there's corruption at different levels. One level is just administrative level. The other level, that's what we have, what Americans have. Another kind is like in the bones, that the Chinese have. They have their bureaucrats have the approval rights, a lot of approval rights for almost everything, in something deep into the market economy. They have approval rights, and they have a lot of things to do. So that's a different level of corruption. So you want Americans level, the Western kind of corruption, rather than the Chinese. I recently studied a lot more about the Chinese system. Oh man, I'm not very happy about what I saw. It's really concerning. It's really concerning.
It seems to work all right at the moment, according to Daniel Bell. But you know, if you get some big crisis where there's a big intellectual crisis where you have to make a choice, you know, the whole idea of meritocracy, when it's meritocracy within a bureaucracy that's having its own definition of merit, you know, it's promoting people who it likes, and so there's something.
Which kind of speaks to your point, I think, a little bit, right?
There's something illegitimate about it, you know, because who picks the people who are being meritocratized, you know? It's
who defines? Yeah, your thing was who defines merit.
Yeah.
The undemocratic.
They constantly
Thank you very, very
struggle.
much again.
Nice to see
David,
you
thank
again.
you.
Yeah,
I'm
good to
very
see you.
much rooting for your ideas, even though I'm
good.
skeptical.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm not skeptical.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
not at all.
Sooner or later, he's going to go down.
No.
Question is,
I mean, on all the things that I agree with David on, he's correct, and then on the things that I disagree with David on, I'm not sure what they are at the moment, but on all the things that I disagree with David on.
Since we're talking about systems of government, I would refer you to the article I wrote on sortition.
On what?
Sortition.
What does that
How do you
mean?
spell that?
SORTITION.
What, I never heard that word.
Sortition. Is
Yeah.
that like
I thought I read your
partition, but with instead of part, it's sort?
article. Is this in Nation? Where'd you?
Which book was this in?
I think it's in The Mystery of Fascism.
Okay.
Oh, I thought it was in a magazine.
Yeah, well, everything appeared somewhere else.
Oh yeah, right.
It appeared. I think it was National Review actually.
National Review. That's it.
You had something published in National
Yeah.
Review?
Oh yeah, it wouldn't be in
all
the
about
Nation, would it?
sortition.
Cool.
all about sortition, and the title of the title of the article was "Why Stop at Term Limits?"
Why stop at term limits?
Because everybody was talking about term limits back then. It's sort of dropped out of discussion now, but there was a period where everybody was talking about term limits. So the idea of sortition, since you're obviously gasping to know,
Yes.
I am, actually.
is that you
But I don't want to show myself as gasping to know because
randomly pick from the population who is to constitute the members of the
Oh
parliament.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You just randomly, you put all the eligible names in a computer, and you pick it's voting by lot.
Yeah.
You know,
sort of like picking a jury.
Yeah, and in fact, this was the general method of picking public offices in Athens. They
Cincinnatus.
in Athens, ancient Athens, which is called, you know, an early example of democracy. They very rarely had everybody vote for a person for an office. What they did was they picked them by lot, and they actually had a special machine, randomizing machine, to do this. And they dug up examples of this machine that the Athenians used to choose people for political office. The only big exception where they did have voting was for a military officer type position. They voted for their generals, but other kinds of public office, it was done by sortition.
I can see very good reasons why the distinction, why they would want to vote for generals.
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense.
You don't want to you want people who are skilled in military matters. It's a crucial matter.
Not only that, but you want people who, where the general has the support of his, rank and file right out of the gate.
Right, yeah. There are several reasons, but
I like this idea.
I mean, I think it would work. It would work especially in a bicameral system where you would have one. Like the Senate would be elected by votes, but the House would be chosen by sortition. And of course, what that would mean is that typically a person wouldn't think out of the blue, "Oh, I'd like to go into politics." What would happen is they'd be chosen, and of course, well, it depends whether you would compel them to attend, but probably you wouldn't. In which case, a certain proportion of those chosen wouldn't bother with it,
Maybe there's enough honor and prestige and status with it that
if it was for like 10 years or something, there would be less of an incentive to corruption, because you wouldn't be part of a promise-making machine to the same extent. You'd just be picked and you'd have to choose.
Yeah, and there would be. The question though becomes, I like that idea, but one of the problems about, which reminds me of term limits in this respect, one of the problems that just pops in my head is, like with term limits, what you do is you effectively you strengthen the deep state, the entrenched bureaucracy, because they don't have term limits or whatever.
Right.
And it seems like a sortition system would suffer from the same kind of deficit. That, like, if people are chosen at random, which the benefit is, they didn't spend their entire lives, conniving and striving to get politically, blah blah, and getting corrupt deals with, financial backers, and all this kind of stuff. Like, you avoid a lot of the problems that we see today. On the other hand, if we still have a deep state, which is typically up to no good, how does a sortition system grapple with that? Would be my question. You know what I mean?
Wouldn't be any better, wouldn't be any worse.
It might be better. Yeah, I'd be willing to roll the dice and gamble on a sortition system. I absolutely would. As long as we can make sure that the pool of people who would be grabbing straws.
We're all white and male.
I didn't say it.
God.
I didn't say it.
Please.
Yes, you want it so desperately, this system, that you say, "Oh my God, please, yes, I understand your eagerness to embrace this system."
What's funny is that there's I'd have to look it up, and I won't, because it's not worth it. But I remember seeing, like, every now and then there will be some person who's not white. Like, the person who comes to mind, have you ever heard of Jesse Lee Peterson? Do you know who that is? Mm-hmm. Have you heard of Jesse Lee Peterson?
Younger brother of Jordan Peterson.
He's no relation. In fact, you could just look at the two of them and you would probably guess right that there is no relation between them, because Jordan Peterson is white and Jesse Lee Peterson is black.
Okay.
And there are some, like, if you've ever heard, it's sort of like a sound clip, a sound drop that people use in some other programs. Cause
is that a conservative black?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesse, I know.
Jesse Lee
I know
Peterson.
Jesse. I can't
like,
recall his performance.
like, he comes across like he's kind of slow and dumb, and he'll even say about himself,
Skinny guy, right? Skinny, kind of.
He's not fat, but I don't know. I would call him skinny.
Probably
like,
not the same person.
Yeah, maybe not.
Not the same person.
Like, if you've ever heard of, like, there'll be sound clips of him where he'll be saying, like, amazing, or beta, like that. So, like, if he's talking to somebody and somebody says something just left wing and generally just, like, he'll be like, beta. And it's just funny. Like, it's just funny, And he's talked and interviewed with a bunch of really good people. And one of the things that he has said, I think he was actually on Dr. Phil one time. and he was talking about how white people need to have more babies because if there's not enough white people. Now, this is a black man, Jesse Lee Peterson, saying this. So I'm just saying. I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I'm just saying Jesse Lee Peterson, a black man, was saying, you know, that something along the lines of, you know, white people, you know, this country will you know, it will be bad for this country if white people are not having enough babies. We need white people. That's it.
Why?
You'd have to ask him. My guess would be is he thinks white people. It's hard to just say it, even when I'm just saying what somebody else says. I think he thinks that white people are overall just better. I think that's what he thinks. And if that's what he truly believes.